Hello everyone. If you like this audiobook and want to listen to more, please consider subscribing. And if you like this video, like it as well, enjoy.
Chapter 11. Pure Chaos. Crack. The domain clash finally ended after a painful minute or so of brutal survival. Both domains shattered at once, and the pressure vanished, and then came the impact. I didn't even realize I was flying until my back slammed into the ground outside the domain's boundary. Beside me fell Maki, though a tad bit more gracefully. The girl had at least landed on her feet. I felt like I broke almost every fiber inside me against that monster. Why the hell is a special grade so powerful? Everything hurt. Burns stung across my arms and side, my clothes half-charred and sticking to my skin. My breathing was uneven, each inhale dragging heat into my chest. It felt like the entire respiratory tract inside me had been burned to a char. You, cough, okay. I asked Maki, and to my slight jealousy, she was indeed looking much better than I. Her body was more durable than I had anticipated. But we were alive, and for that I was glad. Yeah, so what's your plan? Now that we are out, tell me. Maki nodded and asked, eyes still on Jago, who too had gotten out, but unlike us, who were punched out by him, he calmly stood there like he owned the place. He was mostly unharmed, even the minor damage Maki and I delivered healed up in a matter of seconds. Didn't even know cursed spirits had super healing. I forced myself to stand, legs shaking slightly, but I poured more CE to reinforce myself. Between the fighting, I had figured out how to do that with much more efficiency. I observed him for a few seconds before answering Maki. Cooldown. What? She asked, confused. After a domain use, a sorcerer's technique goes on cooldown. Could be seconds, could be minutes. During this time, we can't use our curse technique. I assume it's similar for cursed spirits as well. I can't use my domain for a while, and he most likely can't use his fire-based technique either. This is our chance, we have to take him out before he recovers his technique, I explained. Maki blinked, looked at me, then at the cursed spirit, then back at me. I understand, she nodded. Maki didn't know that something like this exists. Honestly, how many did she know in Jujutsu higher in the Zenin clan who had a domain, let alone someone who would explain this to her? Only one, and that idiot had himself sealed by this lot. Maki's earlier scowl turned into a feral grin. That fire was a pain in her ass until now. If not for my water technique, both of us would have been done for by now. If that fire technique was out of the equation then. We can jump him, she muttered. I nodded. Together. We moved at the same time. She rushed him head on, Naginata already midswing. I followed a step behind, CE reinforcement tightening around me. I was getting better at this cursed energy business during the fight. But when it came to fighting itself, I sucked. I could only amateurishly throw punches and kicks with reinforcement. That was the limit of my current offensive capabilities. Jago moved at the exact same time we did, almost twice as fast as us, covering more distance than we could, launching himself toward us. Maki's strike came down with enough force to crush bone. Human bones, mind you. Not spirit bones. Definitely not special grade bones. Jago raised his arm and blocked it. The impact cracked the ground beneath them. It was almost terrifying how physically gifted the girl was. I was almost envious, but still, Jago's stance didn't break. I came in from the side. My punch landed against his ribs. It felt like hitting solid rock. However, the impact wasn't fruitless. Jago was pushed 2 steps back by it. Jago turned his head slightly, his eye locking onto me. That big eye honed onto me like a predator finally spotting its target. His logic was on point. The woman had almost no cursed energy. The real threat in this fight was the man. But the woman was annoying. Kill her first and remove the annoyance. Kill the man who killed Dagon next and the match ends anyway. Both options worked for him. However, that all sounded good in theory. In practice, he found it particularly annoying how hard we were turning out to be to kill. His hand shot out and grabbed my face. Pain exploded as he slammed me into the ground. Spiderweb cracks formed where I hit, my vision blacking out for a few blinks from the impact. If not for my improved reinforcement, my head would have been crushed completely. Before he could follow up, Maki struck again, this time aiming for his neck. Jago twisted, releasing me just in time to catch the weapon again. His other hand drove forward, slamming into Maki's stomach and sending her skidding back. He really didn't need his technique to beat the shit out of us. My eyes locked onto Maki's Naginata in Jago's hand, and my body moved on instinct. Cursed energy surged up, and I swung a kick, which the cursed spirit totally saw coming. He jumped just in time to avoid it, but that was enough for me to grab onto the long weapon's handle in his grip. Using it as leverage, I pulled myself up and headbutted Jago hard. Now, I understood, even without flames, his strength, speed, and durability were overwhelming. But what the FCK, his head was so damn sturdy. The stars I saw a few seconds prior came rushing back, filling my vision. It was only a testament to how hard I delivered that headbutt that even Jago was clutching his head, forced to let go of the naginata and step back 3 steps. "You annoying damn human," he growled. A fist was already coming my way. I happened to have a weapon in hand, so I used the only thing I had as a shield. With a sickening crack, the wooden handle of the naginata snapped into 2. The punch continued and hit me with reduced force, but still enough to throw me 5 steps back. Just as another attack was reaching for me, it was suddenly intercepted by Maki, who appeared out of nowhere. "Give me that," she shouted without looking, and I knew what she wanted. I just threw her the broken weapon. "Once this is over, you're paying for this." Seriously, she cared about that in the middle of something like this. I honestly felt there was something wrong with this girl's brain. Or were all jujutsu sorcerers like her? "Quit lying around and help me," Maki grunted, fighting off Jago's relentless assaults with her broken weapon. Had to say, even with a broken weapon, she used it like a master. How old is she to master weapons like this? I got up, struggling with acute pain in my chest, but forced my body anyway and rushed at Jago again. We adjusted mid-battle. No plans, no words, just pure instinct to survive. Maki moved first, and I followed. Just like earlier. Though, followed, might have been misleading. I was moving, yes, but it was she who moved me. Literally dragged me to match her speed. Jago stepped in again, aiming straight for me. I barely raised my guard with reinforcement snapping into place before Maki intercepted, slipping into his range and deflecting the strike with her forearm. "Don't think, move," she snapped. I did. At least, I tried. Jago's next hit would have taken my head off, but Maki grabbed the back of my collar and yanked me out of the way like I weighed nothing. I said move, don't think. How am I supposed to do that? She shoved me forward immediately after. I stumbled, and my fist crashed into Jago's side. The girl was using me like a humanoid weapon. It worked though, and that's why I wasn't complaining. Cursed energy surged through the impact, forcing him a step back. I pursed my lips. The damage was there, but he healed almost instantly. This won't do. Not even a moment later, Maki yanked me back again. I saw her face only inches away from me, as our body almost connected before she used the turning and earlier pull as a leverage and shot her own body forwards. I barely retained my balance while she engaged Jago once more, drawing his attention, controlling the space while I covered for attacks she couldn't handle, until she threw me in once more. I get it, I was the only one doing damage between the two of us. But if it was just me, I would never land a hit. She was creating openings for me. I respected that, but which man would be happy being manhandled like a toddler? But, since Maki took the battlefield command, we were doing much better. Can't argue with that. Every time Jago shifted his focus to me, she was already there, striking, redirecting, forcing his movements just enough to create an opening. I never hesitated to attack, I just couldn't figure out when she wanted me to attack. Which was the correct opening? How was I supposed to know that? I wasn't a fighter like her. It was chaos, but that's why we were surviving. If I didn't know when I was attacking, then how the hell was that volcano freak supposed to figure it out? A full-on throw sent me flying straight at Jago with just enough alignment to land a hit. And I learned as well, timely covering for her when she couldn't handle constant exposure to Jago's strikes. In midway, when I was moving to attack again, Jago seemed to intentionally take the hit from me, catching me off guard. He grabbed me and, much like Maki, yanked me away, his hand going straight toward Maki's broken weapon. He caught the broken shaft of her naginata. Before she could react, he snapped off the jagged blade still attached to it. My stomach dropped. When he kicked her away and turned toward me, weapon in hand, without his technique, that weapon was the next best thing he had to kill. I was mid-step, off balance, completely open. The broken blade drove forward, aimed straight for my abdomen. Instincts kicked in and I forced my reinforcement as high as I could, but that wouldn't be enough to tank a naginata blade aimed at my abdomen. Just when I started to see the light, a hand forcefully grabbed my shoulder and violently yanked me sideways. The blade missed me by mere inches, and sank deep into Maki instead. Right into her abdomen. My eyes widened in horror. Maki. Chapter 12. A Heated Clash 1. Maki. My eyes widened watching a 7-inch-long blade insert into the girl's abdomen so cleanly that even blood didn't have space to leak. I had no idea how severe the wound was, but the scene alone brought a wave of despair onto me, which at first made me question whether struggling here was even worth it. Would it be just easier to let the curse do as he pleased? I have died once, what once more? But that thought was instantly vaporized seeing Maki's pained face, a line of blood leaking down from her mouth. Next came anger. Anger at the ridiculous situation I found myself in, anger at myself for being so weak, and anger at the cursed spirits who just can't give me any break. For God's sake, I just came here, got dragged into Gojo's domain, got my mind shattered, and ever since, I was just trying to survive, just give me a damn break already. Eyes bloodshot, I poured more cursed energy into my fist and punched with all my power, with nothing but getting even with the volcano bastard on my mind. Of course, Jago saw the attack coming, he was ready for it, but just as he was about to move, a familiar feeling came over him. Like a lightning bolt crashing down on him, his one big eye widened on its own, moving toward where he sensed the incoming dread. Sukuna. Someone was messing with Itadori Yuji, or else there was no way Sukuna's cursed energy would awaken so suddenly. He had to go now, he had the rest of Sukuna's fingers on him. Unfortunately for Jago, that momentary lapse of concentration was enough for me to drive my fist right at his skull with everything I had. A shockwave tore through the station, followed by a bolt of black lightning, which I was quite familiar with. Black lightning erupted out of my fist, distorting the very space, and the next second I felt a jolt of clarity inside my mind, and the special-grade volcano head was airborne. I gave everything in that punch of mine, poured all my accumulated anger, frustration, grievances and of course cursed energy, which was much higher now, mind you. The result was Jago getting launched at the wall of the station lobby, blasting into it, breaking the wall outright, and still going strong until his airborne body collided with another building outside the station. Before I knew it, I was already moving toward the damn cursed spirit, my eyes wandering toward Maki just for a second before snapping back at Jago. The best way to help her is to take the special grade spirit away from here, the newfound clarity in my mind spoke, and my body obeyed. I sprinted at my best speed toward Jago, who felt his world spinning there for a second. I was halfway, ready to deliver a flying kick onto the curse, but he moved first, moving out of the place just in time and rotating his body to land a haymaker punch at me. My instincts after that black flash were on point, just like back when I fought those hundreds of curses. I moved just in time, shifting my body midair and catching his hand, using my velocity and weight to throw him away. Both of us stood up just in time and were already rushing at each other. My fist shot toward his face, he tilted his head slightly too easily, and my punch grazed past him. His counter came instantly, a straight strike aimed at my throat. I barely brought my arm up in time, getting him by chance was one time, but the bastard was still better than me in almost everything. The only thing keeping me in the fight was the boost from Black Flash. The impact still numbed my hand, though, he was both stronger and faster, and if the technique cooldown ended, then a lot more destructive, meaning I have to end this fight fast. I stepped in again, closing the gap before he could reset, a low kick aimed at his knee, seeing Maki doing it like this earlier. He blocked it with his shin, and pain shot up my leg immediately. Idiot, no copying Maki. His elbow came down toward my spine, I twisted, barely avoiding it, and drove my shoulder into his chest instead. The hit forced him half a step back. My breathing was a mess, apparently. There was an entire method to breathing during a fight, has to be because mine was all over the place. Seeing his momentary lapse in balance, I sent dozens punches his way, most thrown at random, only focused on making them fast, while only a few had real intent to hurt behind them. Jago weaved through them, his movements precise and minimal, every dodge felt like he was measuring me. I genuinely wished to know how. Isn't having one big eye worse than two? How is he measuring the depth of the attacks? His own fist slipped through my guard and slammed into my ribs out of nowhere. I could have sworn I heard something crack. I staggered, but didn't fall, just raw force pushed me through it all, because if I fell now, I was done for, not just me but even Maki. I grabbed his arm before he could pull back and dragged him forward, throwing my head into his face. Don't get cocky. The impact rang through my skull. I didn't have to guess this time, I was certain it was cracked. My vision split into 2, then 4, and then 8, haze clouded my eyes as the pain from the headbutt I just performed shot through me. Okay, no imitating anime protagonists either, they might have nothing in their brains, but mine is full with my fragile ego. But it seemed to have worked. He recoiled back hastily. I followed immediately, driving a punch straight into his chest. I couldn't even focus on him properly, however my instincts and recently found sense of cursed energy were telling me exactly where he was, so I just focused on that, followed my gut feeling, and punched. Cursed energy surged once again, I felt my fist connecting in time, and then for a split second everything aligned again. Black lightning tore open the space once more, erupting a shockwave which almost cleared my haze. The world distorted as the impact landed. Jago's body folded before being blasted backwards once again, this time much faster, tearing through the ground as he was sent flying across the street, carving a path of destruction through concrete and debris. Follow, follow, follow him, don't let go. My mind resonated with only this mantra, hammering the point into every breath I fought for. Every step burned, my body screamed at me to stop, but I pushed harder, already chasing him before he could recover. The second black flash had cleared my mind enough to at least think straight. Jago on the other hand felt like his mind was hammered by someone, his single eye looked bruised, and the volcano on his head emitted smoke of utter confusion at his current state. And just as I was on him again, ready to start another round of violence, my mind snapped. Not the bad kind, but the kind which reminded me that it had recovered. No, it had recovered even before that, I just couldn't think in my anger. It was my technique. Black Flash had recovered my technique. I didn't even have to think before my body was already moving, gathering all the cursed energy into my hand, I pushed it down to the ground with force. The second it hit, the ground burst open, a crack formed along the side of the smoothly built Shibuya street, and water came out like a natural disaster. Jago noticed it, of course, but that didn't prepare him for the next tsunami which erupted from beneath my feet. A wave of 6-meter-tall water came crashing toward him and slammed into him with so much power that he couldn't even move in time. Chapter 13. A heated clash, 2. Water roared into existence behind me, vast and violent, swelling into a towering mass that blotted out everything in its path. A tsunami, born from raw cursed energy and instinct, crashed forward with unstoppable force. The wave swallowed him whole. Even if he had reacted in time, without his cursed technique, he couldn't have done anything in front of such a large-scale attack. Concrete shattered, cars twisted and were dragged like toys. The streets of Shibuya vanished beneath the surge as everything was ripped away and carried forward. Now I realized why this level of curses are called disasters. They can indeed cause casualties and property damage like natural disasters in life. And this was just water. I didn't even wish to see what something like an outer space disaster would look like. The thought of a meteor shower rushing towards Earth would terrify even someone like Satoru Gojo. Sure, nothing can touch the guy, but what about his friends, his family, or the best barber shop he gets his haircut at? Shaking my head out of the possible disastrous nature of this world, I focused back on the cursed spirit I just sent flooding. I ran. It was of course a good thing Volcano Head was moving away from the station, but I can't let him out of my line of sight. Riding the edge of destruction, chasing the point where the wave would break, I found my target. Jago looked pissed. The water began to settle in the distance, collapsing into chaos and ruin. I was already running towards him, can't let him get his balance back. As long as I reach him, I know I can get through this. So I bolted, launching myself at him with everything I had. Before Jago could even remove a bowl's worth of water on top of his volcano head, he saw a shadow falling on top of him. Jago moved faster than he had ever moved in his life, and the next second the entire area was cracked open by my landing. I was pushing my cursed energy output as far as possible. Those black flashes have indeed helped me in fights. Curse you, Jago gritted his teeth. But unlike what he expected, I didn't rush at him immediately after I landed and destroyed the street, no. I formed a familiar hand sign which made his eyes widen when he recognized what I was doing. Domain expansion, death. Before I could even complete it, his fist crashed into my side, taking away my breath. The volcano moved so fast that I couldn't even track his movements. You annoying human, why can't you just die? Jago growled, swinging a haymaker fist at me. I barely caught that and swept my leg at his, going for his knee, but he jumped and gutted me right at the abdomen with his knee. My balance crumbled at that sudden blow, and I was sent skidding across wet concrete, breath knocked from my lungs. He didn't let go, though, just like me, he was also already after me. He was on me instantly, striking again and again, forcing me to defend instead of focus. I barely defended myself from his fury-infused punches and jabs, hardly had time to free my hands. I knew that if he gave me any leeway, it was over for him. His technique was still on cooldown while I could open my domain. Every time I tried to create even a moment of stillness, he shattered it, mainly trying not to let me join my hands. For God's sake, why do I need both hands to use my domain? Why couldn't it be just a one-hand sign domain? I blocked a strike, countered with a punch to his jaw, but he barely reacted. His knee drove into my stomach, once again folding me over in pain. Okay, that definitely felt personal. All air was knocked out of me with that one hit. No space, no time. The bastard was not leaving any gap for me to exploit. I gritted my teeth and forced myself forward again. Fine, I'll make the opening myself. I lunged at him with determination clear in my eyes. It's been already a few minutes since our last domain clash, his technique would recover any minute now. I have to hurry. A straight punch, he parried. Another punch immediately after that, but he dodged this one. And that was when I found it, the gap. This was what Maki was talking about. I stepped in closer, the earlier dodge leaving the volcano head in a strange position. I exploited it. Pouring cursed energy into my legs, I once again went for a knee blow. Jago staggered as his knee gave out just in time. This was my time. Domain X. Before I knew it, Jago pulled a one-hand stand and with his non-injured leg aimed right at my jaw to spin my entire vision around. Son of a. Anger once again filled me. I was so close to ending this match and this guy wouldn't let me. Irritated, I let go of the damn domain, sigh, FCK that. And let the hostile instinct take over. A fist was aimed right at Jago's smug face as soon as he came back up on his legs. For a second I felt my fist vibrate on contact, and then for the fourth time since I woke up in this world, the sparks of black blessed me. Space distorted open, thunderous black lightning sparkled, burning the surroundings and painting everything with black. Jago's face distorted and he was launched yet once again toward a building, creating a crater in the wall and getting lost somewhere in some poor bastard's kitchen. Pain exploded across my body. As much as those black flashes were clearing my mind, they were also making me realize just how much I have overexerted my body. End this. I'm ending this now. Domain expansion. Death. Before I knew it, my head snapped backwards, my balance gone and blood exploded out of my head. My astonished eyes widened and captured why I was falling back instead of opening my domain. A frying pan, hanging just above my head. A frying pan which just flew out of that. I couldn't even complete the thought before more kitchen appliances came flying at me, out of that hole made in the building. This bastard, he wouldn't let me open my domain, no matter what. Before I fell, I supported my upper body with my hands and with all my strength tossed myself back to my feet. As soon as they touched the ground, I was running towards the damn kitchen. I'll cook that volcano today. Jago seemed to have the same thought. He emerged out of the building almost at the same time, rushing at me. I was a tad bit faster. My fist was already on top of the cursed spirit's face, with everything I had left, which wasn't much, honestly. My body was running on fumes by now. Jago's head snapped to the side as the impact jolted his head. His posture broke with that attack. However, instead of throwing a punch or backing away, he did something I didn't expect. He caught my fist from retreating. For a second, my inexperience made me ponder why, but the answer came not that long after, when his other hand was near his chest, open palm blazing with fiery cursed energy. Time came to a standstill there. It felt like that heartbeat of time was stretched to all eternity. The human brain works quite fast, actually, especially a sorcerer's brain. It didn't take me a PhD in fighting for me to realize what happened. The bastard baited me with that earlier attack, he took it intentionally. Motherf. And then, there was agony. A particular agony of being burned alive by heat so strong that even your bones wouldn't be left behind by the time it was over. I could feel my flesh melting, clothes evaporating. I didn't wish to give the cursed spirit that satisfaction, but an utter growl of pain and an anguished cry let out of my very being that I couldn't suppress in time. Salute to both Nanami and Naobito for taking it like a man. It didn't take long, for a cursed spirit of Jago's caliber, it often didn't even take a blink of an eye to end a human's life. The human only survived because his technique was burned out. But his irritation and anger towards this human were so great that he made sure he enjoyed that scream of pain for as long as it lasted. And then it was over. When fire, light, and heat were gone, only a charred shell was left behind. Barely standing, ready to crumble any second. He let go of the corpse's hand, letting it meet the dust and be one with it. It fell. Slowly, steadily, until it stopped halfway. Jago's one big eye snapped open when he felt the human's hand grab his own in one tight grip to break his fall. Impossible. But the corpse, no, the human wasn't letting him move an inch. Jago couldn't help but only stand there and see the human's charred fist rush like a meteor towards his own face. And just as it arrived, for the 5th time in this day, a phenomenon called black flash graced them. Jago was launched like a bullet towards a building and got plastered there. Darkness covered his vision for a while. His mind lost all motivation to do anything outside of contemplating why the hell he was even there to begin with. What's the point of living? Until he snapped out of his daze by the bulging pile of hot blood pooling in his throat. He spat out a mouthful of cursed spirit blood and gaped at his own trembling frame. Anger, irritation, helplessness, and all sorts of feelings overcame him. Why won't this human die? He wanted to shout to the high heavens. Complain, if possible, to the Creator. He gathered all his strength and got himself out of his crater, which was his 3rd crater of the day. With fire in his eyes, he was ready to bring down a real-life meteor to show the human imbecile what a crater looks like, but upon seeing him, all the fire ran out of him. The completely charred human was on his knees, like dead but refusing to fall down. Jago could only stare at the charred figure who didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't say anything for a few seconds before sighing. I have to find Sukuna. With that said, he turned around. 3 steps. That was all he took, just 3 steps. Before he heard these dreaded words. Domain Expansion, Chapter 14, A Heated Clash 3. Jago found himself teleported somewhere else entirely. Gone was the dark night sky of Shinjuku, the streets, neon lights, and civilization altogether. Everything was gone. Jago stood upon soft sand. The sun's golden rays fell onto him, softly, gracefully, perhaps a bit harshly as the tropical heat washed over him, but for a cursed spirit created out of humankind's fear of earth and volcanoes, he didn't even feel the slight difference. For a moment, he did not move. The battlefield, ruin, water, destruction, was gone, replaced by something he knew. Something carved deep into his memory. A tropical island he remembered from before, when all of his companions were together. The air was calm, the sky stretched endlessly above, bright and clear. Palm trees swayed gently, and the distant horizon shimmered. Except, his eyes shifted. The ocean was gone. Where there should have been endless water, there was only emptiness. A hollow stretch of space, as if the world itself had forgotten to finish forming. Everything else was perfect, every detail intact. But the absence was wrong. Jago's gaze narrowed. He knew this place. Dagon. The name came out low. It was his domain. Jago, for what it was worth, couldn't figure out what was happening. Wasn't he supposed to be inside that human's domain? Why was he here? Could it be that the human didn't even copy Dagon's technique but also his domain? No, not possible. Domains are personalized to a person. The Surhit effect could change, but not the theme, not the domain itself. So, where was he? He asked himself, confused and a bit hopeful. His one big eye roamed around, taking the familiar place in until he finally found something which forced his eye to widen. Where the ocean should have been, something was floating there. The figure was so familiar that Jago didn't even need confirmation of who he was. Dagon, hovering in empty space, exactly as he had been, form, presence, cursed energy, all identical. Not weakened, not distorted, and very much alive. Jago for a few seconds just stood there, trying to convince himself that this was a dream, an illusion, but it couldn't be. The cursed energy was exactly like Dagon's. Unfortunately, the domain didn't wait for his decision. Without warning, the Surhit effect activated. Aquatic Shikigami erupted into existence, surging forward in an overwhelming tide. Creatures of teeth and fins in monstrous forms, all converging on a single point. Jago couldn't even react before the Surhit effect of the domain had him completely covered with all sorts of aquatic Shikigami. Claws tore into him, jaws clamped down, bodies collided with crushing force. The sheer volume of attacks drowned out everything else. His body was ripped apart piece by piece. Chunks torn away, flesh shredded, limbs forced back under the relentless assault. It was the damage which finally jolted him out of his reverie. His mind snapped back into place, cursed energy surged around him immediately, coating him in a thick form of coating. It was domain amplification. The next wave of Shikigami struck, but couldn't get their teeth to sink into him before being repelled by Jago's domain amplification. The very technique which earlier saved him from Satoru Gojo was now saving him from Dagon's domain. The surhit effect broke against the amplification, its guaranteed nature stripped away. The creatures still attacked, but no longer with inevitability. He tore through them, burning through their forms with raw physical force, crushing and ripping them apart as they came. Without the surhit effect, those creatures were nothing for him. However, there was still Dagon. Still floating, watching him from further away. Dagon. Dagon. No response, nothing at all, which made him finally believe that something was indeed wrong. Before he figured out what to do about the situation, without hesitation, Dagon's figure launched itself forward. Next second, Dagon was right on top of him, his fist connected to Jago's hand which he raised just in time to block. The impact sent a shock through his body. The power was real, this couldn't possibly be an illusion. Oi, Jago growled, this isn't funny. Dagon completely ignored that, he continued to attack. Jago countered, deflecting the blow and stepping back. He clashed again, trading blows with the figure. Every movement was familiar, every angle, every surge of cursed energy. To the minute detail, everything was like Dagon. However, Jago's gut feeling told him that this wasn't Dagon. He can't be. It was identical, yes, but not Dagon. I see. Is this that human surhit effect? Is that how he killed Dagon? He forced Dagon to fight one of us. Jago's expression darkened. What insolence. Jago's temperature rose, the volcano on top of his head boiled, leaking gases. And his one big eye narrowed into a dangerous half-moon shape. Dagon pressed forward without pause, each strike carrying the same weight as before, the same destructive force. Jago blocked, countered, moved, but his options were limited. While domain amplification still covered him, he couldn't use his technique. As long as it was active, his own technique had to be dormant. That was the trade-off regarding this particular technique. If he dropped it, though, then the surhit effect of Dagon's domain would shred him in seconds. Jago exhaled. There wasn't really any other option. If this was indeed that human's domain, then he had no other choice. Be it then. Jago's eyes one last time flickered towards the still attacking form of his old friend, even after knowing that the one he remembered had already passed on and would maybe be reborn someday in the far future, that this one wasn't his friend but just an imitation, he couldn't help but feel anger towards the person who would do this. Next second, his cursed energy surged outward. Domain expansion coffin of the Iron Mountain. His own domain erupted out, flames came into existence, carving into the tropical landscape, tearing through the false paradise. Once again, a domain clash was taking place. The surhit effects collided and then both sides' domain surhit effects got neutralized. Surprisingly enough, both domains' refinement was mostly on par with each other. However, even without the surhit effect of Dagon's domain, he didn't stop. If anything, he sped up. Even as the domains clashed, it continued forward, attacking without thought. Jago met the imitation of his old friend head-on, blows turned explosive. Each strike carried heat, each movement trailing destruction. That was the most dangerous part about Jago's technique. It was inherently destructive in nature. If it hadn't been on cooldown, that fight against that human wouldn't have lasted half that long. But the imitation did not falter, weaken, or slow down. It was going strong to the point Jago once again was left to wonder whether the one he was fighting really was an imitation. Out of several blows they exchanged so far, the only minor difference he could figure out between Dagon's usual behavior and this one was water. He wasn't using water. In fact, the entire domain had no water whatsoever. That alone was an indication that this wasn't Dagon's domain. This wasn't Dagon. The fight went on for a while, even after Jago finally determined to erase this cheap imitation. It wasn't like he could with a snap of his fingers. The power was real, very real. He kept burning Dagon's image in front of him, while taking damage himself. He was better, plain and simple, but that doesn't mean he was winning. At this rate the fight could go on for a long while. He can't have that. He had to go find Sukuna's vessel. Enough. I'll end this phase in one move, he growled. Cursed energy gathered inside his body, and then he was airborne. The air grew heavy. The sky darkened. Above them, something formed. It was a massive burning ball of death. A fireball the size of a small island, which would have destroyed the entire Shibuya if Jago were to launch something of that scale on a city. And he was pulling that inside a domain clash. Maximum technique, maximum meteor. The meteor fell as if heaven's wrath had been brought down on earth. It was death in all sense, even for a special grade curse like Dagon. However, facing such danger, the water disaster didn't back down. Instead he rushed towards it, rushed at the massive meteor and rushed at Jago who launched that thing. Dagon directly faced the attack, his body burning up, yet he refused to use water. His cursed energy rose higher and higher to meet the threat until nothing of him seemed to be left. And then came the collision. It tore through the sky, crushing the false domain beneath it. The impact was absolute, fire and force collapsing everything in its path. The impact was so devastating in fact that the domain clash finally broke. The two pieces of space separated from reality, vanished from their place of existence alongside all the evidence of those ridiculous feats of jujutsu pulled by Jago. As for the volcano head, he was left there, panting hard, wounds slowly healing as his cursed energy started fixing him. His soul eye was still on the place where the charred remains of Dagon were. However, they were gone. They were an imitation after all, he sighed. Exhausted and once again at his technique's cooldown, Jago sighed tiredly, ready to just get out of there. Sukuna was still in his mind. Not so quick, but that was when a familiar voice once again sounded in his mind. Jago's head snapped back faster than Sukuna's slashes. There he was, that human. Charred just like earlier, he looked worse now. But still living. Anger boiled inside Jago for what he had to go through inside the domain. Just as he was about to rush at the insolent human and finally kill him, he said something which gave Jago chills. Domain expansion. What? But how? His technique should be on cooldown. That's impossible. And as if the human understood his plight, he sent a cocky smirk at him before finally finishing. Death trade. XXX. Surprised at the twist, gotta say I had to think about it before writing. Fighting here in JJK world are not simple, a lot of nuance are involved if you plan to make them realistic to the core JJK power system. Specally higher level fights with domain and complicated techniques. Chapter 15. Technique revealed. The domain expanded, the area was once again shrouded in darkness, and a very familiar giant cross with weight plates hanging from its sides arose behind me. Jago could only have time to turn around and catch sight of my domain already established before he was completely locked onto his place. His one big eyeball roamed all over the domain as if he was hallucinating. But how? How come you're not falling into technique burnout? Jago honestly couldn't get it. To open the domain back to back 2 times was almost impossible. Domains put a huge impact on the brain, so much so that after opening the domain, the user has to wait for his technique to cool down before he or she can even attempt to use his technique, let alone open the domain once again. All the huge cursed energy expenses on opening one domain aside, even considering that the human had enough cursed energy, there is no way he should be able to perform domain expansion 2 times in a row. Jago's trembling eyes were fixed on me, occasionally glancing back at the giant, ominous cross hanging behind me with dread building inside him. I wasn't in such a good condition either. Jago's earlier attack had done a number on me, my entire upper body was charred, I couldn't even feel my own hands at this point, that's how bad my condition was. I was running on fumes, I knew it. Just push it a bit more, and I'm as good as gone. And that's why I had to pull the last trick I had in my arsenal. I agree, I replied to the hostile feral curse spirit with a calm, almost too calm response. My voice barely came out, I could hardly hear myself, let alone him. But surprisingly, he did. One thing more to be grateful about in this accursed world, I suppose. Jago, seeing my condition, once again tried to move, but my surhit effect of the domain had already made him immobile. He wasn't going anywhere. Irritation snarled onto him and he tried to use domain amplification to cut out the surhit effect of my domain. Next second, his one big eye was wide open enough for me to just pluck it out from its socket. Knowing his shock, I continued. I knew even if I were to open my domain after you recovered your technique, the outcome would have been the same as earlier. Even if I made sure you lose your technique by trading away Dagon's technique inside the domain, I knew you had domain amplification, I replied, making Jago confused. It's understandable, Jago still hadn't figured out the nature of my technique. I was fighting him all the while using Dagon's technique. What do you mean? Jago asked, getting desperate at his helpless condition. His technique was on cooldown, he couldn't open his domain, he couldn't move, nor was he able to use amplification to shake off the surhit effect of the domain. Hehe, explaining my technique, huh? What a JJK thing to do. I genuinely felt a strange sense of irony in what I was about to do. Explaining my technique to an enemy, it would be idiocy in any other world, but here, it was rewarded. While my memories of everything else were still at the back foot, I did figure out everything I had to know about this world thanks to all those black flashes earlier. I chuckled to myself, though I had to cease that action immediately when those motions felt like breaking my insides apart. I was already a living mess, I didn't wish to be a dead mess anytime soon. I was in the worst condition, and I apparently had expected it. Death was around the corner, but at this moment, I was alive. Well, what the hell? Albeit, my technique allows me to forcefully impose trades on anyone inside my domain. As you can feel it yourself, you can't move. That's a trade. I have restricted your movement by trading away my own movement. Both of us are no better than stones until the domain doesn't collapse. Jago blinked, finally starting to figure out the nuance of my technique. He finally started to connect the dots. I continued, usually, trades have to be equal in value for them to work. I can't ask you for your life in return for something less important, can I now? Back when my domain connected, before you clashed your own domain with mine, I had you in there. But couldn't figure out a suitable trade in my favor. Didn't have anything on me which could have given me a leg up. Jago's brows furrowed. What about Dagon's technique? What about this domain? How did you do that? Seems like he wasn't interested in me boosting my technique by revealing it. Shame, I wasn't stopping just because he wasn't interested in it, and it's not like I was talking because I needed that power boost. Though I certainly could use some in this condition. What do you think is the biggest trade someone can make with Volcano Head? I asked, with a glee. His face visibly reddened in anger and heat upon me calling him that name, but he did give it a genuine thought before answering. Ideals, identity, or one's life. I nodded. Inside my domain, whoever loses, loses the trade of death. He loses everything while the winner gets it all. Jago's eyes widened. Dagon, you're smart. I smiled. Your cursed friend lost, and thus I had his technique, cursed energy, and anything else I desired from him. If earlier Jago's face looked angry, then now he was livid. So his assumption was correct. The human had stolen Dagon's power. That still doesn't explain how you used his domain, or used your domain immediately afterwards, Jago shouted, struggling his damnedest to move but couldn't. Sacrificial trade, I added. Sacrifice. Technically, I should retain his power for as long as I wished to, but in times like this, I can sacrifice a power or technique which I acquired from someone else. This contains everything I took from them. And in return, I can summon a mirage of them to fight for me. Someone who is treated just like the original, not as me or an extension of my technique. Jago's eyes widened. That, the one fighting you inside that domain, it was indeed your friend, it has everything of your friend, besides his mind and soul. I knew I can't beat you without putting you inside my domain. But you own a domain and that amplification technique was a hindrance. If I had used my domain, the most likely outcome would have been the same as what happened before. A domain clash, leaving both of us burned out again. And I don't think I can survive that next clash. So I sacrificed the technique and power I got from Dagon, made him use his domain to consume yours, I replied calmly. But every word of mine made Jago bust a vein. Steam rose from his head, but he surprisingly reined in his anger somehow. And what about my domain amplification? What the hell did you do? He asked with clear hostility. Ah, that annoying technique. I grimaced. If not for Jago knowing both domain and domain amplification, this match wouldn't have lasted this long. As I said, generally every trade I make inside my domain requires me to trade away something of the same value to activate the trade. This was the exact reason I couldn't stop you last time, I wasn't fast enough to find the right trade. But, guess what? Those black flashes really give a sorcerer a new perspective on Jujutsu. As if someone had cleared the path for me, I realized how to solve that issue. Can you guess what I did? I asked, once again amusement entering into my tone. Jago kept glaring at me, as if ready to throw me into molten lava the second he had a chance. After a silent wait, he finally spoke. A binding vow. Hehe, you're indeed smart. Yes, I used a binding vow. Instead of making my trade on a value basis, I made a vow to make the trade on conditions. Jago contemplated that, but couldn't figure out what that was supposed to mean. What's the difference? Let me explain, I offered. The first trade I made inside this domain is our movement. As you can see, it's restricted. Neither I can move, nor you. If one has to point it out, the value of this trade is on point. In general, it's fair to both sides. Jago increasingly looked impatient. The second trade was to restrict domain amplification or any other sort of anti-domain techniques inside my domain. Once again, this goes both ways. Jago's single eye immediately narrowed. He snorted almost. Why the hell would you use domain amplification inside your own goddamn domain? Hee, well, true, but it's not as much a question of why would I use it, as it is can I use it. And I'm not just saying in terms of one can't use domain amplification inside their own domain, I replied with a smile. Jago blinked. What does that mean? He replayed those words again in his mind, trying to figure out what the human meant until it finally clicked. And when it clicked, his eyes widened. You don't know amplification. Jago wasn't asking, it was a statement. I nodded. But, that's not fair, you said the wager would be equal. He trailed off, recalling what the human said his binding vow was about. Condition. The vow I swore was simple. I shall have the same condition on both sides of the trade, shall bear the same burden and restriction as my target of trade, as long as the value of the trade is a non-issue. Now it doesn't matter whether I know domain amplification or not to trade away, because we are not trading in value, instead on condition. Rather than giving up the technique itself, we are giving up the right to use the technique inside the domain, either we can use it or not. It's more of an imposed restriction than an imposed trade, one which I am in control of, I sighed, already ready to end this conversation. Jago's face looked like he was ready to burst any second. Whatever, I don't care. We are both frozen. What are you going to do? If those two are your only trades, then you have nothing to attack me with. I'll just wait here until your domain collapses and then kill you and that woman you tried so hard to protect in front of your eyes, he shot back. Tisk tisk tisk, do you really think I made this entire plan to capture you without a way to end it? I snorted. Did you feel something wrong when you fought Dagon in his domain? I pointed out. As if thunder struck his mind, his eye widened to epic proportions, then shifted to my hands, which weren't quite on the domain hand sign by now as he thought they were. Both my palms were joined, like I was praying. And then, I tilted my joined hands forward towards him, pointing at him. Water. The one thing inside Dagon's domain which was missing was water, Jago muttered with dread, finally building in. Yeah, I nodded, and at the same time, a shockwave of water erupted from my connected palms. I intentionally withheld him from using water, so I could use it as a one-time attack later. I'm sure you have seen this move before, I'm calling it piercing water. A sharp burst erupted from my hands and an arrow-like jet of water, condensed, lightning fast and deadly, rushed right at Jago. Jago's big eye saw the water beam in slow motion as it arrived in an instant at his eye with deadly force. Stand proud, volcano head, you are strong. XXX. Man, I had this ending for this fight for so long in mind. I planned to explain my technique in one place for those who couldn't understand from bit and pieces. And gave another piece of what they're capable of doing with sacrificial trade. There is more of course, but for now, that's all you guys are getting. Hee. Chapter 16. A Miraculous Disaster. Nanako and Mimiko stood side by side in the dim, ruined corridor of Shibuya Station, their attention fixed entirely on the unconscious body lying before them. Yuji Itadori, Sukuna's vessel, wasn't moving, his chest rising only faintly, his clothes torn and stained from the fight he had barely survived. The air around him still carried remnants of violence. There were more holes on the boy's body than the two girls combined. Blood pooled beneath him, and the boy's entire right shoulder was gone, completely dislocated and injured to the degree that he might think if he even so much as moved it, the entire arm was going to come falling off of him. They waited. At first, they had expected something immediate, some violent transformation, some overwhelming surge of cursed energy that would tear the silence apart and announce the return of the King of Curses. And to their credit, it did happen. The moment they fed the unconscious boy the one Sukuna finger in their possession, the cursed energy erupted out of him like a flood. It was malicious and overwhelming to the point they wished to just bolt out from there. However, they stayed. After all, there was a reason they were betting with their lives here. But after that surge, there was nothing. Instead, what they received was a brief, suffocating pulse of malicious energy that sent a chill crawling down their spines, sharp and unmistakable in its presence, leading to dying down into nothingness. The energy faded as quickly as it had come, leaving behind only the same heavy quiet. Nanako frowned, her eyes narrowing as she stared at Yuji's unmoving form. "That's it," she muttered, the irritation in her voice barely concealed. "We fed him the finger. Why isn't anything happening?" Mimiko tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable but her grip tightening around the rope in her hands. "Maybe it takes time," she replied, though there was little confidence in her tone. "Or maybe, he's resisting." Nanako clicked her tongue, clearly dissatisfied with that answer. "Resisting? It's Sukuna. How is he still in control after that?" She kicked lightly at a piece of debris near her foot, her frustration growing with every passing second of silence. "This is pointless. We should have seen something by now." Mimiko didn't respond immediately, her gaze still fixed on Yuji as if expecting him to suddenly sit up at any moment, like a big bad villain ready to tear them apart on first sight. That didn't sound like something she wished to face, but unfortunately for both of them, that was exactly what they needed currently. But the boy remained stubbornly, almost painfully human. No change in him. Inside Yuji's body though, the situation was much different. Sukuna sat upon his throne of bone and shadow, one hand resting lazily against his cheek as he observed the girls with an expression of complete disinterest. Pathetic fools. Did they really think one finger is enough? If it was that easy to get control over this damn brat's body, then I would long have done so. He scowled. A low, almost inaudible scoff escaped him as his fingers tapped idly against the arm of his throne. For a fleeting moment, the thought crossed his mind to simply lash out, to send a dismantle tearing through the body from within and carve those two nuisances apart where they stood. Not like he can, but the thought was all that counted, right? The brat had to go ahead and lose against that cursed spirit and now he lay dying. It was infuriating. Part of him wished to heal the brat, because that would be saving himself, at least part of him. But the satisfaction of seeing the brat dying was also enticing. So he waited, just as he always did. There wasn't much to do inside the brat anyway. If only Yuji Itadori weren't someone who could have suppressed him, or better yet the brat wasn't his vessel to begin with. It was clear that curses weren't very affectionate towards his vessel. Time passed, he waited for those girls to give up or finally kill the brat, when suddenly a surge of cursed energy rippled through Shibuya, distant yet unmistakable. He, of course, instantly sensed it and his blood boiled. He knew that cursed energy. Fushiguro Megumi, he grumbled, earlier irritation of being kept like a prisoner inside this brat's body turning into anger. Clearly, he wished to go there and see what that was about. He had sensed many things tonight, curses, sorcerers, fragments of chaos scattered across the city, but this was different. One of Fushiguro Megumi's Shikigami, surely, but this was different. He could tell. There was a weight to it, a presence that stood apart from the rest. And that intrigued Sukuna. Tch, useless brat. He once again cursed the annoying human who was currently his vessel. The first thing he was going to do when he got control over this body was to find a better vessel. MC Pav. My eyes were fixed at the non-existent stars up in the night sky. No doubt, city skies are the worst possible places for stargazing. The tall buildings already obstructed much of the view, and the little sky I had in my blurry vision, I couldn't spot a single star there. As for why stargaze, because my body wasn't capable of doing anything besides that. Once I won, my domain cracked open, I just let go. Fell back with a thud, my body giving out. I just enjoyed the feeling of a hard-fought victory, the cold wind of Shibuya on my regenerating skin with relaxation. Yeah, I was healing. Slow, but it was there. Winning in a death trade does that to me. Perhaps it was the added vitality from the opponent or something else. I couldn't care less until it fixed me enough to make my way back to Maki and the others. They have a healer with them, right? What was her name? Shomo, Kosho, Shoko, something along those lines. Just gotta reach her and I will be fine. At least I hope so. Now that I had time to think upon, I had realized how easy it was to recall memories after hitting a bunch of black flashes. Those punches were really blessed. Unfortunately, I still couldn't remember my name. Shame, since I now at least know in whose body I was reincarnated. I was a nobody, honestly. No one I remembered from the show, though that can't be said with much confidence seeing I don't happen to have all the information about Jujutsu Kaisen. Still, I would rather use my own name when I recall it instead of the person whose body I was occupying. When I recall it, that is. The soothing feeling of my body slowly repairing was incredible. It didn't fix everything, of course, but at least my body was somewhat in working condition now. That was enough. The knockout after having my life threatened on 3 different occasions after coming to this world, and the 2 just under half an hour, was more than enough to make me lie there till morning if I had a choice. Unfortunately, I didn't. A strong cursed energy signature, which I was getting rather good at spotting by now, broke my rest, bringing me back from dreamland to reality, reminding me that this place was still just as dangerous. I slowly, with much effort, stood back up, every part of my body protesting, begging for more rest, but I pushed through nonetheless. My eyes first fixed on the direction from which the energy signature came. Bad luck, there was a huge building in the middle to see anything. Good luck, because I don't intend to check whatever that was out anyway. If that were where trouble was, meaning it's the other way where I have to start walking. Before my feet lifted, my eyes fell on a scroll on the ground. My instincts told me it was trouble. That and my newly obtained senses about cursed energy, both. Before I had a chance to find anything about this in my memory, which was much better now. I heard something. Are those wolves howling? Then silence. The sound came from the exact place I sensed that cursed energy from earlier. FCK it, I'm getting out of. Crash. Before I could complete it, the said building shielding me from whatever the hell was going on the other side of it tore open and something blasted out of it, flying past me, engraving itself into the building behind me. Everything happened so fast that I couldn't even react. Turning back, I saw a big crater and in the middle a bloodied figure. A blond boy with markings on his face passed out. I could especially see the last of the marks from his face withering away. And then, a chill ran down my spine when I heard strong, heavy footsteps from behind. Every fiber of my being told me not to look, don't look, but with shaky, robotic shifts of my neck, I turned. And what I saw left me hollow to my soul. A giant figure, with wings coming out of his face. Divine, almost. A big-ass sword attached to his hand and a wheel. Oh, that wheel, and that grin on that monster's face. My memories, for the first time, had to strain to know what I was facing. And knowing that just intensified the dread. From my core, I just cursed. Damn you, Fushiguro. Chapter 17. Get help. Nanami walked along the quiet shoreline of a Malaysian beach, the evening sun casting a soft, golden hue across the endless stretch of water before him. The rhythmic sound of waves gently meeting the shore filled the air, creating a sense of calm that felt almost foreign to him. For once, there were no curses to exorcise, no urgency, no weight pressing down on his shoulders. Just peace. The breeze carried the scent of salt and warmth, and for a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to simply exist within that serenity. In that moment, he was lost to the world and found himself. His footsteps slowed as his gaze drifted toward the distant horizon, where the sky met the ocean in a seamless blend of fading light. It was there that he noticed a figure standing alone, partially obscured by the glow of the setting sun. Something about that silhouette felt familiar, though it took him a moment to place it. He narrowed his eyes slightly, focusing. Recognition came gradually, like a memory resurfacing from deep within. His eyes trembled at the image. It couldn't possibly be true, right? Haibara. The name left his lips quietly, almost uncertainly. Nanami. The figure stood there, just as he remembered, calling out to him with the same easy warmth that had never quite faded from Nanami's memory. There was something gentle about it, something that tugged at him in a way he had long since learned to ignore. Nanami. Yet now, he found himself walking toward it. Step by step, he approached, the sound of the waves fading into the background as his attention fixed entirely on the person before him. Haibara continued to call his name, his voice carrying across the space between them, unchanged despite the years that had passed. Nanami stopped only when he stood directly in front of him. His eyes still couldn't believe he was here. For a brief second, neither of them spoke. Then Haibara reached out. His hand grasped Nanami by the side with sudden force, the motion sharp and jarring as he shook him, still calling his name, his voice no longer distant but right beside him. Nanami, wake up, and just like that, the illusion shattered. Nanami's eyes snapped open, the warmth of the sun was gone, replaced by the suffocating heat, discomfort, and the face of the distressed girl in front of him. The calm of the ocean was replaced by the fanatic urgency of the girl in front of him. Haibara was, of course, gone, in his place stood Maki. Her hand gripped his shoulder tightly, her body swaying slightly as she struggled to remain standing. Blood seeped through her side, staining her clothes, her breathing uneven from the strain. For a moment, Nanami couldn't process it. What was happening? His mind lagged behind reality, still caught between the dream and the present. Then it all came rushing back. The Shibuya emergency and the barriers surrounding Shibuya. Gojo being sealed. The newly awakened sorcerer they found in Shibuya Station. Then them facing two special grade curse spirits one after the next. It surged through him all at once, no longer suppressed by the fragile illusion his mind had clung to. The left side of his body burned with unbearable intensity, his flesh scorched and raw. His left eye was gone, reduced to nothing, and the absence of it sent a disorienting wave through his senses. His hair on that side had been completely burned away, and his left arm hung uselessly, refusing to respond. Keeping breathing was a greater issue than remaining standing still. Nanami, snap out of it, Maki shouted once again through gritted teeth. She had lost too much blood and her body was starting to fail. Damn, that Onide curse got me good, she internally cursed. She planned to go after the cursor Fushiguro, but her condition was getting worse. That curse spirit definitely pierced something important inside her body. And then there was Nanami, the older man, half burned as he was, who suddenly got up and started to walk away. If she hadn't caught him in time, gods know where he would have gone in his days. Nanami gritted his teeth, forcing himself to remain upright despite the agony threatening to bring him to his knees. He lifted his head, scanning the area. What's going on? He asked. The special grade curse spirit was gone. Only Maki stood beside him, injured but conscious, and a body lay a short distance away, unmoving and burned beyond recognition. Nanami didn't need to ask. Naobito Zenin. At least the body wasn't that disfigured that he couldn't tell that. Before he could gather his thoughts, the sound of approaching footsteps broke through the tension. Several figures rushed into view. It was the second-year students from Kyoto, their expressions tense as they took in the scene before them. It was Momo Nishimiya, Kasumi Miwa, and Mai Zenin. Maki. Mai's eyes widened as she rushed towards her big sister. What happened here? One of them asked with horror written into her face. Nanami remained silent. Neither did he have a complete answer, nor the strength to give them. It was Maki who spoke instead, her voice strained but steady as she began to explain. A special grade curse spirit attacked us. We took him down with some help, I'll explain later. But there is another, even stronger, Maki pointed out with urgency. The Kyoto students and the one manager among them looked at the battered Maki and half-disfigured Nanami with abject horror, even trying to look at the burned corpse a few feet away from them and gulped. Where? Maki just pointed where both that cursed spirit and that boy disappeared, with gritted teeth. Fushiguro is handling an enemy without cursed energy, just like mine. He is extremely strong physically. He eliminated the first special grade we encountered. As for the other, who did this? She pointed at herself, Nanami, and Naobito. And then pointed outside. He dragged the special grade away with him, Maki said, this particular line while looking at Nanami. The others blinked. Wait. He who? How many people is she talking about? Is Fushiguro Megumi fighting two enemies? Nanami understood, though. The boy, Nanami muttered with complicated feelings, of course, after knowing that the boy was capable of using a domain and even being capable of taking away their techniques inside his domain, there was no way Nanami was underestimating him. But to fight a special grade curse by himself. We have to give him reinforcement. He was just a civilian until now. We can't leave things on him, Nanami said, though he himself was in no condition to do anything. That's not possible, Nanami-san, all forces are already being deployed. We could only come here after we got the distress signal and eradicated all the curses from our side, Miwa pointed out. Where is Todo? He is looking for Itadori Yuji. TCH. We need a plan, Nanami said with a helpless tone. I have the plan, we go and help them out, Maki snorted, already forcing her body to move and find that damn boy who didn't even have the decency to tell his name. Wait, where are you going? You need healing. You're going back to Shoko's. Mai tried to convince her, but the girl was too stubborn for her own good, she pushed her body on anyway. At least until she collapsed after 2 steps. It wasn't the injury itself but the blood loss she had suffered which caused her to fall. Idiot, I told you. Come on, we have to take them to Shoko, Mai rushed into action. Nanami sighed, they were not in condition to join the fight, if they did, they would only be a hindrance in their condition. Any news of Satoru Gojo? he asked. None. Nishimiya shook her head. Damn it, Maki could only curse to herself. Her eyes were locked on the broken segment of the station building, glaring outside as if she could reach there just by watching. Don't die out there, you idiot. Chapter 18. All hands on deck. Boom. The world spun around me, and everything became a blur before I found myself flying, weightless and moving faster than I ever had. The impact came before I could even process what had happened. My back crashed into the side of a building, the wall gave way, cracking into a million shattered pieces and a crater formed at the point of impact. Seconds later, gravity did its job and I hit the floor hard enough to knock the breath out of me completely, my lungs refusing to draw air as I lay there for a moment, stunned. The world rang around me, a sharp, high-pitched noise drowning out everything else as pain slowly began to seep in, spreading across my body like fire. I coughed a mouthful of blood out, my head spinning like I had recently attended an MLM gathering. Seriously, though, what happened? I was there, standing peacefully, minding my goddamn business, and then that motherfucker came crashing on the building side beside me, and then... Oh, forcing my arms to move, I pushed myself up slightly, my vision swimming as I tried to focus on the disaster standing in front of me. Dust still hung in the air, drifting lazily, however, I saw it clearly no matter how much my eyes refused to accept the reality. Eight-handled sword Divergent Scylla Divine General. The crown jewel of the Ten Shadows technique in the Zenin clan. Mahoraga. At least I now remembered who he was. My memories were on point, mostly. The Divine General just stood there, its massive form unmoving for just a moment as the wheel above its head remained unturned, almost mockingly calm as if I wasn't worth it. I wasn't, but damn it, my eyes stung, going hazy at the ordeal thrown at me one after another. Why me? What did I possibly do to deserve this? Does God not wish me alive or something, or what? If so, then be a man and tell me right to my face, I'll give you my life. Stop making a game out of it. Tears unknowingly trailed down my cheeks. It wasn't about being afraid of dying. I was ready for it. But why after coming this far? What's the point? The injustice of it all made me rage out, wanting to complain to the high heavens. But there was no time to mope. The disaster was right in front of me. Just looking at it made something tighten in my chest, a quiet, creeping realization settling in that this one I won't be able to survive. Then it moved. I didn't even see the motion properly, only the result. One moment it was there, and the next it was already in front of me, its blade descending in a clean, effortless arc aimed straight through me. My body reacted before I could think, instinct taking over as I threw myself to the side. The blade missed me by a fraction, carving straight through the ground where I had been, splitting the floor apart as if it were nothing. It was my instincts which once again saved me, my body moving on its own, out of the line of attack at the last possible second. If I had the luxury of it, I might even have made a Dragon Ball joke right now. I hit the ground awkwardly, trying to roll and create distance, but I was too slow. Something slammed into me from the side. The force of Mahoraga's backhand hit like a collapsing wall, and I felt my body lift off the ground again before I was sent flying back out through the building once again, practically coming back to where I started from. For a second, I just lay there, trying to breathe, trying to move, but everything felt heavy, like my body wasn't responding the way it should. Nothing was responding at this point as it should. Everything besides my godforsaken luck, that is. A big part of me just wished to give up already. There wasn't much left to live for here. There was no one in this world who I could call my own. The world was a big enough mess as it was. Dying was an easy way out. Gives me a reason to complain more when I go back up there, to the reincarnation management body. But damn it all, I didn't want to die. Not after coming this far. I inhaled sharply, filling my damaged lungs with oxygen. It hurt a lot, but I did what I possibly could and moved my body. Tried to feel my cursed energy and reinforce it around me. Come on. One last time, even if I'm dying here, I'll FC King die fighting. My cursed energy obeyed, reinforcing me in time. I forced myself up, my arms shaking as I pushed against the ground, every movement slower than it should have been. My body was already breaking down. That earlier healing after winning against Jago had long been tossed into the trash bin, and the fight had barely even started. Mahoraga stepped forward through the debris, closing the distance with the same steady, unstoppable pace. Think, what can I possibly do? My technique came to my mind, but it was on cooldown after using the domain on Jago. Running wasn't a strategy, there was no way I could outpace him when it came to adapting. I barely dodged the next swing, the blade cutting through the air so close to me that I felt the pressure of it against my skin. The ground behind me split apart as the attack landed, and I stumbled back, struggling to keep my balance. I couldn't fight back. If I attacked, it would adapt. And if it adapts, I die just that much faster. FCK. So I kept moving, weaving and dodging as best as I could, relying entirely on instinct to stay alive. Another swing came, faster this time, and I ducked under it, my movements clumsy but just enough to avoid being cut down. A second attack followed immediately, forcing me to twist awkwardly, pain flaring through my side as I barely avoided it. The only saving grace I found was that Mahoraga wasn't adapting to anything yet. He just mindlessly kept on swinging at me. I had no doubt that he would start adapting if a few more of his hits didn't connect. Perhaps increase his speed, understand my general movement patterns, maybe even predict my movements. I was done for if that were to happen. I have to think of something fast. A glancing hit caught my shoulder, and I felt myself spin before crashing into the ground again. Everything was slowing down. That shoulder was definitely dislocated. My reactions, my body, even my thoughts were starting to lag, and I could feel it slipping away from me with every second that passed. Is this the end? Should I close my eyes and count to 10? I had no idea why in times like this my mind had to joke around, like saying you can't change the outcome either way, why not just accept it and have fun? Absurd as it was, I chuckled. A chuckle originating from the deep helplessness and despair my situation. And strangely enough, it really calmed me down. I gathered cursed energy onto my other arm and brought it down forcefully at my dislocated shoulder. H. Pain shot like a hot knife carving through my bones. Shouldn't have done it like that. But the act brought my focus back. Pain was indeed a useful tool at times. With clarity and focus, a plan started to form inside my mind. Dangerous as it was in my last-ditch effort to make it out of here alive. But I'll be damned if I at least don't give it a try. I slowly shifted my eyes and gritted my teeth. Mahoraga was almost on top of me again, the only grace I had being that he was aura farming and slowly walking towards me. I forced myself up again, stumbling backwards, my breathing uneven and ragged as I tried to keep moving, to keep space between us. My eyes also captured the slowly crawling figure of that blonde boy who brought this disaster here. He isn't dead, then why is this asshole after me? Go after that son of a BTCH. I wanted to complain to Mahoraga but knew it was pointless. A dark part of me wished to know if I were to kill that boy in Megumi Fushiguro, then would this end? Would this monster go back to the same shadows he crawled out of? Most likely no. As I walked further, I was blocked by yet another building. A dead end. Turning around, I saw Mahoraga standing in front of me, its massive form unmoving as the wheel above its head turned slowly. What did he adapt to? A question which honestly didn't matter at this point. But still, curiosity kills the cat, I guess. Fine, let's give it all I have. Mahoraga raised his sword up high, ready to bring it down on top of me in one smooth swing and slice me in two. However, just as his hand was about to fall, to end my life and my struggles, he stopped midway. Something tugged him from behind and suddenly he was yanked out of his place by his long snake-like tail at the back of his head. And then the entity went ahead and tossed the giant away like he weighed nothing. Already dying this soon, how fitting of a death for a human such as you, said my savior with clear disdain in his voice. I couldn't care less about what he had to say though. I looked at him with distinct boredom, at how I had to face this face again so quickly. Less talking and more fighting. I pointed at Mahoraga, specifically at his head. Remember that Shikigami can adapt to your attacks and techniques. We have to end him in one attack. Huh, you mean I have to end him in one attack, while you get to survive, human? I rolled my eyes. Even after dying this cursed sarcasm hasn't been lost. What will you do? He asked. I'll use the domain and stop him when you're ready. I'll need some time, though. He scoffed at that. I glared at his one big eye and said seriously. Don't use your fire until you're ready for the final attack. Go all out and remember that sword in his hands. It emits reverse cursed energy. Stay away from it, I explained. He rolled his one big eyeball around, smoke emitting from his volcano head as he turned towards Mahoraga who had already switched to the stronger target between the two of us. Take it seriously, if that sword catches you, you'll die. Jago, or at least the sacrificial summoned version of him, looked down at Mahoraga and then the sword in the Divine General's hand and then back to me. Nah, I'll win. Chapter 19. Joso goaded. Sacrificial trade. A kind of trade that allows the user of the Death Trade Curse technique to one-time manifest a copy of an entity previously defeated by the user inside his or her domain, at the cost of sacrificing any and all things obtained from the said entity. I honestly didn't even know that was a possibility. At least not until I hit those black flashes. It was really true when they say that a black flash in the world of Jujutsu is the single most important indicator to observe a sorcerer's potential and talent. The difference in understanding and control of cursed energy and technique for a sorcerer is like of heaven and earth before and after hitting a black flash. I hit 5 of them. Needless to say, if I'm not pulling shit like this out of my ass, then I'll be better off dead. It cost me though. To beat Jago, to waste his domain, I had to give up on Dagon's powers, and now to beat Mahoraga, I am being forced to give up on Jago's. My tired eyes lingered a little longer on Jago, at the power I just forsook to survive, and then at Mahoraga, the culprit. Both Jago and Mahoraga were glaring at each other with an intensity that could have melted their fraud allegations for once. Fraud, you ask, because neither of them actually ever won a fight against a really strong enemy, at least I don't remember them doing that in the anime. I could be wrong, of course. Another reminder that I might not have read the manga, since even after much probing at my memories, I couldn't see past what happened in Shibuya. While I was in my own mind, the two monsters didn't stand around for me to recover. 1 second they were standing in their respective places, and the next, both were gone. It was surprising that even Mahoraga, that hulking monstrosity, could move that fast. Was that what he adapted to before? Speed. Jago, though, was much faster than me. At least in raw speed. Both collided midway through their rush, fist to fist, generating a shockwave that left a mini crater behind on the ground after their collision. I gulped. Loss of Jago's powers be damned, I was just happy that I wasn't the one facing that monster. And then what followed was what I would call a typical DBZ-style hand-throwing session between the two. Fast, accurate, and utterly painful when I recall how hard that bastard curse hits. Though, maybe not as hard as Mahoraga. Ding. The wheel turned once, and the next fist connected directly with Jago's face, sending him 10 steps back. If my eyes weren't playing tricks on me, I could see Mahoraga's body shifting ever so slightly. The body became slightly smaller and leaner, indicating it was adapting for speed and agility. His entire body changes. Is that how he adapts? I muttered in confusion. Oi, what the hell are you doing there staring? Join the fight. This is your life on the line here, you know. Jago's sharp remark put a full stop to my train of thought. Yeah, I nodded, shaking off the random theories forming in my mind and struggling to get my half-broken, half-burned, completely incooperative body to stand up. Every movement felt like walking on a track full of spikes with salt attached to them for an extra painful trip. Now was not the time to lose focus. Surviving came first, and with that thought, once again I asked myself, how can I beat Mahoraga? With Jago's help, I knew I had the needed firepower. Hell, I always had it the moment I beat him inside my domain. But I can't use it. My technique was still on cooldown. I had to summon him so he could hold back the Divine General until my technique recovered. But can he? My eyes drifted to the top of Mahoraga's head. The wheel was still, no more adaptations. But it was only a matter of time before it spun again. Quit spacing out. How long until your technique recovers? Jago snapped again. I'm uncertain. I have already strained my brain too much with back-to-back domain activations in the last half hour. I hated it, but I knew my condition best. If my estimation was right, I might not be able to open my domain again tonight. Period. No, don't think that. There has to be a way. Do you have any attack that can take Mahoraga in one shot? Give me your best. Jago just nodded. I knew it too. It was the one he used in the anime against Sukuna. His maximum technique. But that will take time for me to prepare. He won't let me. Jago pointed at the Divine General, slowly walking toward both of us again. If not for this monster's aura farming, I'd be toast by now. My lips pursed. Time, that was exactly what I was lacking. How long do you need? 30 seconds, give or take. Silence spread between us. It was only 30 seconds, but in front of that monster, it felt like a huge chasm. A sense of desperation washed over me. The truth was right in front of me. To beat him, I had to stall that monster for 30 seconds. Just half a minute, and I could win. But I knew for certain that in my condition, I'd die within just 5 seconds against him. My eyes trembled. For the second time since coming to this world, my body felt like it wasn't responding to me. Is this the gap between the strongest and someone weak like me? What are the odds we face? I never expected myself to be helping a human, you know. Suddenly, Jago spoke, snapping me out of my thoughts. I glanced at him. Jago's single eye was still on Mahoraga, but he continued. I always thought that we cursed spirits are the real humans of this world. I still do. And yet, even after dying, being here is nothing more than a doll to save the one who killed me. How pathetic an end that is. But you know what? That just makes my belief even firmer. We cursed spirits are better than humans because we never stray from our goals in nature. We do what we are born to do and stick with it until the very end. Even now, under your control, doing your bidding, fighting to save your life, I still hate your existence. However, I'm here to protect you. And just like a cursed spirit, I'll give my all to do what I'm here for. That is our nature. We are true to ourselves, unlike you deceiving humans. I blinked. For a moment, I didn't fully grasp what he meant. Wasn't he bound to follow my orders as a construct created by my technique? But then I realized, Jago was bound to obey, yes. But to speak like this, to show sentience, to assert himself, that wasn't the doing of my technique. That was Jago, his lingering consciousness within the construct. He was helping me, even while declaring his hatred, because that was his nature. To give everything for his role, his identity. I clenched my trembling fist with whatever strength I had left. He was right. To lose fighting spirit by measuring the gap, that was cowardice. That's how losers think. The brave, they take the leap of faith. And they fly. 30 seconds it is. Good enough. Start preparing the fire, already the ingredients. I declared with determination, no matter how much my voice trembled. And I might be mistaken, but I could have sworn I saw his lips curl upward. Hey, cooking, how ridiculous a notion. I expect nothing less from a human. But fine, I'll bite. Let's cook. Chapter 20. Trader's Gamble. Strain. That is what I felt when I tried to open my domain. My brain was too overloaded by constant domain expansions to use my technique once again. It needed rest. I needed rest, but rest wasn't an option. At one moment, everyone seemed at peace, an intense stare-down between all the participants of this deadly game, and the next it all exploded. Once again Mahoraga and Jago moved first, and I followed, albeit at a much slower pace. My injuries wouldn't allow me to keep up with them no matter how much I tried to push my body. It was all a blur. 1 second the silence was overwhelming, and the next a booming collision sound echoed as Jago once again collided with Mahoraga. However, this wasn't just a mere collision of force. Instead of taking it head-on, Jago used his momentum to hurl himself upward behind Mahoraga after their attacks connected midair, at least for Jago since he was much smaller. Mahoraga tracked his target, making an arc over him, his sword of extermination already swinging towards Jago, but by then I was there. I rushed with all the momentum I could muster and tackled the giant's leg to slightly destabilize him. Honestly, it didn't even move the Divine General, but that slight destabilization allowed Jago to avoid the sword brimming with positive energy. Mahoraga's attention shifted to me. Still no adaptation. He simply directed that sword in my direction. Just before the sword could connect though, Jago was already back with a reverse dash, aiming right at Mahoraga's head and punching him with everything he had. The pure physical force from him made the monster take a single step back, but that was enough for me to get away in time. Jago's attack, besides that, did nothing, but by doing so he was following exactly what I had asked him to do, not to use his technique, only hand-to-hand combat. He was at a serious disadvantage. We both were. Mahoraga seemed to contemplate between the two targets he had until he chose to fight the more troublesome one. The sword of extermination attached to his hand lit up with reverse cursed energy, aiming directly at Jago. That strike could end it all. Or, it could save the day. Just as the sword came down, Jago was ready. With all of his reactive instincts he had developed while fighting me, he shifted sideways. Unfortunately, he wasn't fast enough. The sword still grazed his arm, but the positive energy did the rest. It outright obliterated the core structure of his arm, which was a pure cursed energy construct, like most cursed spirits are. The arm didn't cut open like it normally would have. Instead, it just blasted apart and then dissipated. Jago's single eye went bloodshot instantly, but still he didn't step back. Instead, he moved in and, with all of his cursed energy reinforcement, punched the Divine General right in the face, jolting him back. Mahoraga took only one step back before his sword hand was once again raised in the air, ready to make the next strike count. Now, Jago shouted, and I was waiting for this exact moment. I came from behind the Divine General, used his snake-like tail attached to his head like a ladder, and with a sharp and very disrespectful stomp on his head, pushed myself upward, directly at the raised arm. I clamped tightly around the damn sword of extermination and pulled the arm off course the moment Mahoraga brought it down on Jago. The ground split open by what little exposed tip of the sword was left behind, the rest was completely hugged tightly by me like I was a koala. A childish action, but that saved Jago from exploding just like his arm. Mahoraga, upon this, let out an indignant sound that almost sounded like a snort. Before his other giant hand could snap at me to forcefully rip me apart from the sword, Jago was already on top of him once again, delivering a punch directly to the Divine General's face. The force was similar to before. Mahoraga had to take one step back. That was the extent of what Jago could do. And that too only because Mahoraga had adapted himself to be a bit thinner and faster. However, that earlier adaptation let him grab Jago this time midway and throw him away like an annoying bug. Then he swung his sword hand, trying to make me lose my grip and let go. I held on for dear life until finally he couldn't take it anymore, and the wheel on top of his head spun once again. I entirely missed the spin due to the unannounced experience, similar to an amusement park ride I was experiencing on his hand. And then suddenly, the metal of the sword heated up, so hot that even my already insensitive burned skin felt like it was on a frying pan with the stove on. By instinct, I had to let go of the sword. It couldn't have been at a worse moment since Mahoraga hadn't ended his thrill-seeking ride for me. I was thrown at the nearest building yet again, stopping only after completely and utterly ruining its outer wall. By now I had no idea how many times I had experienced being smashed into a building. I wasn't even angry about it anymore. I smelled smoke. My hands, which had held onto the sword, were smoking with burned flesh, black as charcoal. Mahoraga turned towards me but then went back to his original target. In his eyes, I was no threat. Jago was already on the move though, fully embracing the hit and run tactic. But Mahoraga was faster after that one adaptation. Before he could run away, Mahoraga was already on top of him, sword of extermination once again ready to cleave him in half. Just as Jago was about to take a permanent leave from this fight, a large destroyed section of a broken building wall was sent flying at Mahoraga, crashing onto him. Once again, Jago was spared by the sword of extermination. Mahoraga made a grunting sound, as if annoyed. He turned around, and there I was, standing and smoking like a freshly delivered piece of meat. However, not all smoke comes from fire. Some came from my healed wounds. Thanks for the heal, man. God knows I needed that. I grinned. Yup, it was the sword of extermination. Jago too sighed in relief at how the crazy plan worked. It was a rather simple, suicidal idea. Everything depended on Mahoraga using his sword with positive cursed energy output to deal with a curse like Jago. He did exactly that, and since it was an output type RCT, known by how Jago's arm exploded, I knew it would heal too. The healing wasn't nearly enough, but I could feel my body at least in a somewhat working state. That was enough. Something seemed to change inside Mahoraga at that moment as the wheel on top of his head rotated once again. What he adapted to, no one knew but him. Instead of going after Jago, he rushed directly at me. Ah, come on, are you serious now? I gritted my teeth and poured all my cursed energy into reinforcement since there was no outpacing that force of nature. Mahoraga appeared on top of me in an instant. He was fast, very fast. In the next second his mountain-sized fist came crashing down on my head like a hammer falling from heaven. With all my might, I blocked. The impact was bone-shattering, if any were left intact inside me by now to begin with. My legs gave out, and from the sheer might of that blow, the ground beneath me shattered and I dropped to my knees. The taste of iron pooled into my mouth as blood surged out. I felt like my entire body had been hit by a moving train. My hands, they were shaking like leaves about to fall. My mind hummed with a buzzing noise. It took me some time to recover from that blow, but Mahoraga wasn't done. I saw his leg raised right above my kneeling self. Instincts once again came to the rescue, and by sheer survival threat, cursed energy surged once again around my body. I swear I'm cutting open Fushigiro's fingers so he isn't summoning anyone ever again if I survive this. And then the divine general mercilessly crushed me beneath his foot. The blow was so heavy that even my knees gave out, my stance completely broken as I was driven into the ground. Only my hands, shielding my chest, held on before giving in and folding inward under the pressure of that foot slam. Blood poured out of my mouth. My eyes went blank for a second under such a heavy impact. My entire body shook. But Mahoraga was still not done. He raised his sword this time, ready to end this in one sweeping attack. My eyes snapped to the sword. I had to move. I knew if I didn't, I was dead. I had to move. Move, goddammit. I twisted my body to the side, missing the sword of extermination by a hair's breadth. At least most of it. A stinging pain rang through me. The sword barely touched my side, but it tore right through. Pain struck like a lightning bolt. And with pain came anger, so much anger. At myself, at this situation, at freaking Megumi Fushiguro, at that blood-deep mess who dragged Mahoraga onto me. It needed an outlet, and the best one I knew was to punch it out. So, eyes bloodshot and hostility fueling my negative emotions, I did just that. Instincts alone were enough to gather my cursed energy into my fist, and just like back when I punched those cursed spirits in the underground floors of Shibuya Station, out of sheer desperation to survive mixed with anger. I punched, directly at Mahoraga's face, which was much closer due to him lowering the sword toward me. A snapping sound rang out. I felt a jolting vibration, very familiar to me. Cursed energy collapsed into itself and then, like a burst, lashed out. Space itself wrapped around my fist, and in the next moment, black lightning tore out from it. Black flash. Once again, it hit Mahoraga right on the head. For the first time, sending the behemoth flying back. As if my dead brain cells had awakened, my mind snapped into place, and everything started to make sense. I lay there, eyes open, fist still in the air with black lightning around it. And for the first time during this fight, I felt like, I can do it. Both Mahoraga and I simultaneously got up. I supported my bleeding side and looked at the Divine General, who was grinning as usual at me as the wheel on his head spun once. Adapting to Black Flash, TCH, such a cheater. I couldn't help but scoff. But then a similar kind of grin spread across my face. Jago, who was sidelined all this time after being thrown into a building, was finally on the move. He rushed at Mahoraga at lightning speed, ready to deliver the attack. Jago, however, I stopped him midway. He snapped at me like I had lost it. What? I grinned at him and simply said, do it. He blinked, pursed his lips for a second, and then determination showed on his face. Very well, I hope you survive, human. He replied, and then for the first time during this fight, fire erupted out of him, not for attacking, but from his palms, slamming down on the ground like thrusters to launch him into the air. Mahoraga, of course, saw this. But he didn't go after Jago. I was his target now, especially after that black flash. My own eyes snapped to him. Grinning all the way, hands raised up, forming a familiar hand sign. My brain immediately sent out warning signals. It wasn't ready to handle another domain expansion just yet. Not even after a black flash. I knew it, but I don't care. Just as Jago said, I have to give my everything. Find a way. There is always a way. Stay true to your nature. And I'm a traitor. Trade it then. Trade something for this life-giving grace. Domain Expansion, Death Trade, Chapter 21, EGO. Maximum Technique, an extension of a cursed technique possessed by either a sorcerer or a cursed spirit, pushed to its absolute limit. In a sorcerer's arsenal, this was the next best thing after his own domain. Unfortunately, in the modern era of Jujutsu, there are not many who can perform such a feat, to push their technique to its absolute limit outside a domain. However, one such feat was currently taking place. Right in the night sky of Shibuya, a star had started to take birth. Heat and light emitted out of it in torrents as it lit up the night sky. In reality, this was no star. This was Jago, and he was preparing his ultimate technique. A technique which was even more powerful than his own domain in raw output alone. While a domain provides a surhit effect, the usual cursed technique inside a domain is not that different for the most part. Upon having the option between a domain expansion with uncertain chances to kill Mahoraga in one shot before the Divine General adapts, or a maximum technique which was Jago's highest destructive power. There wasn't even a choice to be made. The answer was as clear as the burning ball of fire up in the night sky of Shinjuku. And while Jago was preparing the fire, down below, darkness spread. From the soles of my feet to the end of my eyesight, the darkness spread, only stopping at the urban setting of the environment, buildings and roads obstructing further expansion. Behind me rose a giant towering cross, even dwarfing the likes of Mahoraga. However, something was missing. The darkness was spilling out, not condensing, not overtaking the environment as it was supposed to. That was because there was no barrier to hold it. No, it wasn't an open barrier domain of the legends. This was a no-barrier incomplete domain born out of sheer desperation and my gamble. Remove the Surhit effect. Remove the barrier too. I don't need them. One by one, I traded away everything which made my domain a domain, for a one-time execution to be able to face a monster such as Mahoraga. And the result was apparent. As I sacrificed the usual parameters and advantages of my domain, a sharp spike in my cursed energy was evident. It surged, higher and higher until I felt my output soaring. It was a trade I made, obviously. Removing those effects let me improve my CE output and stack it on the already 120% I was carrying after the last black flash. Energy filled my body. It felt like I could form a black hole with a mere punch of mine. A false sense of power, however, it was intoxicating. The darkness reached Mahoraga as well, sweeping under his legs like black fog. And the result? Nothing. Nothing happened. Without the Surhit effect of the domain, that darkness was just the material manifestation of my domain. It was harmless, and if something was harmless, there was no need to adapt to it. Both of us looked at each other. Silence stretched between us until it finally broke apart with a deafening booming noise as both of us launched at each other. Craters formed where we once stood, leaving behind a trail of dust, and then a shockwave was released at the point we met again. Both of our fists collided, resulting in a shockwave that tore out from the collision. I felt it in my bones, they almost felt like they were vibrating. Then the pain shot out as the clash ended, and I was thrown 3 steps back by the sheer physical blow alone. However, Mahoraga too was affected this time, forced to take a step back by the clash. Physical difference in weight aside, this was the closest I could get to his physical might currently. And what did it cost me? Everything, almost. Mahoraga's evergrinning mouth gave out a chilling smile, which put a damn grin on my face as well. I felt like I was losing my sanity the longer I stayed here. It was maddeningly infuriating and fun at the same time. The wheel on top of Mahoraga turned once again, the adaptations never stopping. Bring it on, I shouted, eager to see what I had in this state. Mahoraga was oblivious. Rushing at me with all of his speed, he slammed his massive hand right at my face, ready to dig me 6 feet down in one clean punch. I wasn't planning on taking that. Instead of stepping back, I pulled my own punch back and hit Mahoraga right at the knee before his strike could arrive. It didn't work how I expected it to, honestly. The strike still plastered me to the ground, and I wasn't even defending against it this time, but much of its power was gone since I disturbed his balance. Groaning, while lying flat on the ground with my head humming, I looked out to see Mahoraga had pulled his leg back like a soccer player and then kicked out. I was the ball. Before that devil's foot fell on me, I wrapped as much cursed energy as I could muster around me, because the next moment I felt like I had been hit by a cannonball. I was airborne, with probably a few more broken bones, and got slammed into a tall building, kicking up dust and destruction upon impact. I got engraved into the wall like a piece of modern art. The world around me spun until I saw a shadow falling right toward me. My eyes went wide with shock as I barely shifted my body before a meter-long sword pierced right next to me. Mahoraga slammed into the same spot of the building like an angry Hulk smashing things in New York, this one just a tad bit smarter with the longest sword attached to him. Cold sweat broke out just thinking about what would have happened if I had shown even a heartbeat of delay there. Spotting a small gap, I dove down to get away from his hulking figure and land on safer ground, at least comparatively, but halfway through I felt my leg get grabbed. Oh no. Before I knew it, everything became hazy and I was slammed into the side of the building and then tossed up like I was some freaking frisbee. I flailed around helplessly midair when a giant shadow appeared behind me, still midair, mind you. For God's sake, give me a Herculean punch cut my rant short as I was sent soaring back towards the earth in a diagonal direction. The reunion was nothing short of diabolical. Like a pachinko ball, I bounced around 3 times before finally, somehow, I don't know how, but somehow landed on my feet with one badass moment in the entire fight to call my own. Sliding back on both legs with blood splashing all over the place, my entire figure was bloodied, but I stood. Boom. A few meters away, Mahoraga landed with his ever so devilish grin plastered on his face. The fight for a second came to a standstill. I just stood there, breathing, heavy and labored to the point I felt like I wasn't getting enough air if the building's suffocation was anything to go by. Lightheaded and blurry vision, troubled breathing, hearing, standing, and continuing to exist altogether. Suddenly, my knees gave out and I fell back to the floor, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Surprisingly enough, that actually felt a bit better in my already terrible condition. A single punch. I gave up almost everything in my domain for a single punch which too didn't do any damage. Just pushed him back one step. And now I was already in this state. The helplessness of weakness, only in moments such as this are revealed. I tried to get up, but my body wouldn't move. It had reached its limit. There wasn't much left to give. Come on, please, one last time. Get up. Tears seemed to pool in front of my vision. I was so close. If I fell here, I'd regret it for my entire afterlife. Come on, rise. I didn't know what caused it, but giving up now didn't even feel like an option anymore. Nah, I'm way too far in for that. I'll win. Even if it kills me, I'd rather die a winner than live as a loser. So get up. Get the fuck up. And, surprisingly enough, to the point that I never could have believed I would actually do it, I got up. I saw the walking disaster back to Aura farming as he approached me with an everplastered grin on his face. And that's when I realized what made me get up. It was no longer survival instinct. This was ego. XXX. Let's be honest, he was cooked no matter how much buff he get by trading away his domain's parameters. But you see, a man's ego is a dangerous thing. Chapter 22. Cinema. It was ego. My ego made me stand up. I ain't dying until I land a cool punch of my own on that bastard. Comical and ridiculous as it was, it brought a chuckle out of me and a similar kind of grin was plastered on my face. I realized I was losing my sanity. And what the hell, I was liking it. An utter war cry tore out of my throat as I rushed at the divine general with a broken body, mind, and ambition. Mahoraga seemed to grin and rushed as well. He was faster, much faster. He arrived near me within seconds. However, just as he was near me, ready to end the fight once and for all, instead of directly charging at him, I let go of my footing and my inertia dragged me forward, sliding me between the gap of his open legs, to the other side. Mahoraga stopped with a powerful stomp and turned around, but I was gone. The next moment I was on his back. I saw his snake-like tail connected to his head and at the last moment jumped to grab it. Pulling myself with all my might, and with one leg on his shoulder, I grabbed onto one of his wings. That earned me a very satisfying jerk from the jerk, telling me they were sensitive. Good. I always wanted to be Tarzan. So I took the leap of faith, grasping onto the wings and using them as a lever to change my direction midair. Mahoraga's entire body weight shifted by how I tugged on his wings. I turned back around on the wing, the laws of motion bringing me back to his head on the other side after one full motion, and with everything I had, I punched. The punch was strong. Not a black flash, I doubt my body had it left in it to perform any more of those miracle punches, but it was strong enough to tear open the wing in my hand as I used it to enforce my weight midair and completely knock Mahoraga back. He fell on his back with a thud. I barely landed on my feet before they gave way, and I fell back. And that was all I had. But I was happy, 'cause I had just plucked a pair of wings from heaven itself. My grin only magnified seeing the pair of bloodied wings in my hands. It was my blood, though, but FCK it. It felt so damn satisfying. And then the adrenaline wore down when the beast once again got up. And he looked pissed. The wheel on top of his head turned once, and his plucked off wing was regenerated. That was pretty cool, wouldn't you agree? I grinned. Next moment, a comet-sized punch drilled me down into the ground. Another one followed a heartbeat later. And then another. Darkness crept into my vision. Everything was becoming numb at this point. But that wasn't the end, not at all. The monster grabbed me by the chest and pulled me up, right next to his face, glaring down at me. I looked back, or at least pretended to look back, since my vision was already blurry. Look, you kinda missed that spot I hit you earlier, there is still a black bruise. Guess your adaptation can be flawed as well, huh? He grabbed me by the leg and slammed me down hard. It almost reminded me of a certain green monstrosity. But once wasn't enough for him. He did it again, and again, and again. Blood pooled beneath me, my CE reinforcement doing the bare minimum to prevent anything too lethal, but it had its limits. I didn't even know how many times it was, but by the time he was done, I couldn't move. I just hung by the leg, lifelessly, in his hand. He scoffed and tossed me away hard toward a building. At least pain was no longer an issue, when everything was numb, that is. Before I knew it, I slammed into something, which broke my speed before once again I met a building. Ah, damn, I broke something. My eyes barely landed on a figure with blonde hair. Wait, isn't he the one? My mind connected who this blonde could be, and even with a broken body, my anger flared up. This was the guy who was responsible for all of this. Seems like I ended up exactly where the fight started. All in a cycle, I guess. He too didn't look in that great of a condition. Lying on my side, he had blood running down his face as well. His leg was twisted, no wonder he was still here. My eyes turned towards Mahorga again, the monster finally seemed to have his fill and was ready to end it. He walked step by step towards us. The boy beside me panicked but couldn't move at all. Just as Mahorga was right on top of us, sword of extermination ready to carve us out, my lifeless body moved. I used every last ounce of power left in me to grab the panicking boy. Oi, what are you? He couldn't complete it before I had dragged him right in front of me. Like hell I was dying alone. He was responsible for this, we'll die together. A small grin flashed on my broken, bloodied face. Let's meet when we are down there, shall we? No. No, leave me, you bastard. Release me, the boy shouted back, struggling, but it was already too late. The sword of extermination flashed and dug right through his chest, coming straight from my heart. At the last moment, I shifted him and myself ever so slightly so that the blade, instead of going to the heart, went through the upper shoulder. But I was done, pinned down, bleeding, and finished. There was nothing left anymore. The boy's eyes slowly lost their light. They say that at the last moment of one's life, we can see our life flash in front of our eyes. I couldn't see a thing. No matter what I did, my vision was just that of a loner, who tried and tried until the end stood in front of him. Or perhaps, it wasn't the end. My dull eyes snapped open, with newfound energy, the last burning flames powering through. With all that I was worth, I squeezed every last bit of my remaining cursed energy and reinforced my hands. And grabbed onto the sword which pierced us. Got you now. I took a very painful and deep breath in. It felt like my lungs refused to expand, but I forced it through nonetheless. And shouted with utter desperation. Jogu oh 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 oh. The voice seemed to echo through the emptied city of Shibuya, ranging far and wide, until a flying curse up in the night sky, hovering just before a dazzling sun, snapped open his one big closed eye. Fire shone in it, it turned with the very desire to burn. A yellow cape fluttered behind him with the dazzling light of the sun at his back. For one last time, let me show everyone why I'm the curse born of the earth and fire. Take it, this is my peak, Jago shouted, a menacing smile on his face. Maximum technique, maximum meteor. With all of his strength, the curse hurled the giant meteor of molten iron and fire right at where I was. Mahorga seemed to sense it. He turned his head back slightly to observe and immediately planned to remove the sword and dodge the attack. However, first trade, no movement. Suddenly, a greater force wrapped around his body, completely halting every and all movement for both of us. A big grin plastered on my face. Even if the surhit effect of my domain is not active, my domain is still deployed, you big shit, and you're currently touching me. Meaning I can trade. If he had eyes, they would have widened by now. Those wings fluttering around almost gave that impression. Second trade, attacks received on the back do much more damage, in exchange for attacks done on the front. Mahorga's back suddenly went hot. Because he was not facing the attack, he was facing the building where I was pinned. Only I could see the giant meteor coming. The wheel on Mahorga's head tried to spin, but I was making trades much faster for it to start adapting. I looked right at him, struggling to move, but my technique had him, with almost no time to adapt. If I had used my surhit effect from the start, then he would have long adapted to it. If I had my barrier up, then he would have broken that. However, without a barrier or surhit effect, there was nothing to adapt. And nothing to stop Jago's attack from reaching us. Say, Mahorga, how does it feel to look down on us mortals from your divine throne, is it any different? The meteor burned through the air, and as it closed in, the heat increased, and the nearby buildings started to melt. Do you know how much I lost facing you? I lost my very sanity, you bastard. My eyes teared up. The night sky lit up with a brilliant hue of red and orange as the entirety of Shibuya saw a sun descending. But I have to show my gratitude, only by facing you could I reach my zenith. He obstructed much of my vision, but I could catch the descending death behind the hulking figure of Mahoraga. In the gaps of your shadows, I have seen light, Mahoraga. I smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile to express my appreciation at what I had learned. To express what I had gained. Finally, the meteor arrived, engulfing everything with light and heat. To think a curse and a human together beat the divine. I chuckled. It almost felt like even the divine general, at that comment, stiffened. Can't you see it, Mahoraga? I raised my voice, blood pumping harder, breathing labored. Don't you think so too, that is, this is absolute cinema, XXX, AN. Building up to this chapter took everything out of me. It's not just the MC who was fighting. He just happens to take more damage between the two of us. Chapter 23, Aftermaths. Outskirts of Shibuya, a sudden shockwave tore through Shibuya, violent enough to rattle the surrounding structures and send a tremor through everything in its path. Heat waves shattered all over the city, melting the ground and cutting off the electricity. The damage endured by the city was catastrophic. Inside the temporary shelter erected by the Jujutsu tech, Shoko had just finished stabilizing Nanami and Naobito. Nanami's condition was bad but not life-threatening. He'll live, but she doubted he could continue to be a Jujutsu sorcerer after this. Half of his body was burned. Even if she was able to heal most of it, it would leave behind scars. And lingering damage, which even her reverse curse technique she can't heal, was always a possibility. However, even this Shoko would consider lucky in her long experience of treating Jujutsu sorcerers. At least he was alive. Something she couldn't, with much confidence, say about the old man looking like a fried fish cutlet on her makeshift operational table. Naobito Zenon's condition was outright bad. She wasn't certain whether the old man would make it. Even if he did, he'll be bedridden for life. Not that much of life was left in him after this. Shoko sighed. At times like this, her addiction started to kick in. She was trying to leave smoking, but the stress was getting to her, ever since she heard that idiot Satoru had gone and let himself be sealed. The air still carried the faint scent of antiseptic mixed with blood and burnt flesh, an all too familiar combination in moments like this. She had just reached for her tools again, preparing to begin treating Maki's injuries, when the shockwave hit. The force of it was enough to jolt her hand mid-motion, the loosely held cigarette slipping from her fingers and falling to the ground. The entire tent shook. Shoko paused, staring at it for a brief second before letting out an irritated sigh. This was why she didn't like leaving her operation room back in Jujutsu Kaisen doing field operations. You've got to be kidding me, she muttered, brushing a strand of hair back as she glanced toward the direction the shockwave had come from. What now? Her voice carried clear annoyance, but beneath it was the weight of exhaustion. Nanami, who was steadily resting after Shoko injected some sedatives into his system to dull the pain, also seemed to jolt up at the sudden shock. Groaning, his single working eye looked around to find he was still in the tent. He half expected to directly wake up in Jujutsu Kaisen, or perhaps waking up again wasn't an option anymore. Before anyone else could respond, a figure rushed in from outside. Momo descended quickly on her broom, her expression showing panic, as if she saw the dark mark announcing Voldemort's rise while flying on her broom. Will you believe me if I say a meteor just hit Shibuya? There's been a massive impact, she said without preamble, her voice hurried as she stepped off and faced them. For a second, the words didn't quite register. Sure, nothing surprises me after I learned complete sex change is possible with RTC, Shoko shrugged. That brought another round of silence. Why the hell was this woman researching something like that? Ignoring the usual emotionless baddie with a sleep disorder, they focused on the news itself. A meteor sounded absurd, something completely out of place even in a night already filled with chaos, but the evidence was difficult to ignore. The shockwave, the sudden brightness that had briefly lit up the sky, and the lingering heat that now seemed to press against the air all pointed towards something catastrophic. Nearby, Maki shifted, her teeth clenched as she pushed herself up slightly despite the obvious strain it caused her injuries. Due to the urgency with both Nanami and Naobito's situation, especially Naobito's situation, she was sidelined until now, basic bandages and a quick dose of RTC keeping her awake and preventing further blood loss. "I don't have time to lie here," she said, her voice tight with restrained anger. "Fix me faster." Shoko shot her a brief glance, unimpressed by the demand. This girl was her primary patient, not because she suffered damage in the mission, but because her training was far more dangerous than the missions assigned to her. The kind of load she put her body through every day, anyone else could have had serious health issues by now. Shoko honestly was a bit envious of that heavenly restricted body of hers. It almost felt like she had endless energy. Sigh. Shoko didn't argue. Instead, she crouched down again, reaching for her tools to resume the work. "Your injuries are minor," she replied, her tone firm as she resumed her work. "However, I advise against straining them further even after I heal you." Of course, the girl wasn't going to listen, but as a doctor, saying so was her duty. And as a cool, refreshing sensation spread all over Maki, healing her mind once again wandered to what happened to that boy. If not for him taking that special grade out of the station when he did, everyone here who survived would have died. Maki's fist clenched tight, knuckles shaking at the force. Weak. Why am I still so weak? She had died, if not for that boy. She couldn't do much against that special grade. It irritated her, irked her, made her mad. "There, you're done." Shoko at last removed her hand. The wound was mostly healed, but still she bandaged her to prevent infection. "Then I'm coming too." Nanami grunted. Now that he was awake, he just couldn't let Maki go alone. "Not you, you're not in any condition to fight." Shoko shook her head, and glanced at Maki. "In your condition," she couldn't even complete before Maki was out of the tent. "I hate teenagers." Outside the tent, Maki was already making her way towards Shibuya, but first she had to find Panda since he had some of her spare weapons. "Don't you dare die on me, idiot, you still have yet to pay for that cursed tool." Yuraum stood in still patience, her gaze fixed upon the ruined stretch of Shibuya as she waited for the moment she had long prepared for. Reuniting with Sukuna-sama after 1,000 years. The plan was simple. Kenjaku was supposed to feed all the fingers in their possession to Sukuna-sama's vessel, Itadori Yuji. And so in belief she waited, expecting at any moment to feel that overwhelming, unmistakable surge of cursed energy that belonged only to her master. But it never came. Yuraum's eyes narrowed slightly as she extended her senses once more, searching for even the faintest trace of Sukuna's presence. At first she traced a bit of it, but it died down almost instantly. What happened? Was her only question. Did the vessel, Itadori Yuji, manage to suppress Sukuna-sama's soul even after eating all those fingers? Impossible. There was something definitely wrong there. A flicker of irritation crossed her otherwise calm expression. Kenjaku's methods had always been unorthodox, but this was beginning to test even her patience. If the vessel had consumed the fingers, then Sukuna-sama should have emerged. There was no logical reason for this delay. "That Kenjaku," she said with a frosty voice. Still she followed the plan, waited until Sukuna emerged, at least until the sky lit up in the night that is. The burning hot cursed energy she felt was familiar. The sudden violent shift in the atmosphere drew her attention upward as an immense mass of cursed energy condensed above the city, its presence so dense and oppressive that it distorted the very air around it. "What is that cursed spirit doing?" she growled. Sukuna-sama's vessel was around there. What followed was immediate devastation. Even she, who had remained detached until now, felt the need to move. The moment the impact settled, her senses sharpened, and she immediately recognized something far more important than the destruction itself. The fingers. Their presence was unmistakable at the location where that meteor fell. Kenjaku will have to answer for that. A cold look appeared in her eyes, and forgetting about the plan, she bolted toward the location. There was nothing more important to her than reviving Sukuna-sama. By the time she arrived, she couldn't feel Jago's cursed energy like earlier. It all was gone. The area had been reduced to a scorched wasteland. Flames still raged across the debris, consuming what little remained, while the heat lingered heavily in the air. Her senses led her to the right location. The fingers were indeed there. Her irritation converted into anger. Without hesitation, Yuraum raised her hand, and a wave of freezing cursed energy surged outward. Ice spread rapidly, overtaking the flames and suffocating them under layers of frost, though the process demanded a considerable amount of her own energy due to the sheer scale of the destruction. Slowly, the inferno died. The vast burning and melting area was frozen to the core within seconds. Only then did she begin her search properly. The energy she sensed was without doubt Sukuna-sama's. So she searched. Amid the ashes and shattered remains, the fingers were scattered. Every time she had to find each finger, her killing intent toward Kenjaku grew. Once she had all the fingers, she was ready to go find Itadori Yuji. Just as she had turned, a sudden sting at the edge of her senses snapped her back like someone was ready to stab her. Behind her was nothing but ice of her own making. No, she narrowed her eyes, a very faint cursed energy signature. She looked around, however, she couldn't pinpoint the source of that energy. Someone seemed to be here. Her senses told so. She observed for a bit more before finally giving up. Even if there was someone under all this wreckage, chances of survival after being burned alive and frozen to death wouldn't leave much behind in him or her. TCH, I don't have time for this. She snorted, and the next second she was gone. XXX. I wonder what that was, lol. I always wondered, let's say Jago never had given Yuji all those fingers, would Yuraum have done it on her own? I do see her doing that. Another question at that, I'm not sure about her gender, there is enough confusion on the internet regarding that, so I'll be sticking with her being female in this FIC. For the lack of any concrete proof. Chapter 24, Miraculous Recovery. Reverse Curse Technique or RCT. A miraculous feat of curse energy manipulation that inverts the very nature of curse energy itself. Outside a domain, and perhaps even including it, this is single-handedly the most difficult skill to learn. To invert the very nature of curse energy, to heal instead of hurt. That takes more than pure manipulation of curse energy, it needs a deep understanding of Jujutsu and more than that, a chance encounter. If only I could have pulled it off. If so, then perhaps I wouldn't be dying right now. Sigh. Ever wondered how it feels like dying? To be in a state where you neither belong to the living nor are gone enough for the underworld to take you. It feels like drowning, like getting slowly sunk into a bottomless, boiling, dark, deep body of water. If you're lucky, then you might see light slowly fade away. If you're not, then darkness has already consumed you to the point there is no way back. Perhaps it's the part where the Reaper, instead of taking us to the other side of the river, ends up throwing us into fend for ourselves. My body first felt like it weighed a ton, even after the dark suffocation of water around me, I felt hot. Like burning hot as in I was inside a boiling cauldron. Sinking deeper, slowly and agonizingly. If the way to hell was like this, I didn't wish to see the place myself. However, I doubt the man up there sitting on his throne has patience for someone like me in his heaven. Hee, funny, almost. Yeah, I beat Mahoraga, pulled it off somehow, had the fight go my way, but what's the point of doing so when I am not breathing to tell the tale? Sinking in darkness while the light of the surface increasingly fades. No fight left in the body to reach out for it once more. What am I to do? On top of that, there was also this burning sensation all over me. And yet, even after all that, I wished for a miracle, for something to flip the table and say you're not allowed in hell just yet. Just once. A miracle, that's what I wanted at times like this. And perhaps the big man up there heard me, perhaps he too wasn't ready to end my suffering just yet, or just way too excited about keep watching me break some more bones. The burning sensation, as if I wasn't sinking in a sea of fire, vanished. Replaced by a soothing cold. I felt the boiling water lose its temperature, as if nursing my burns. I felt a tremor run past me as the light on top brightened, ever so slightly. My descent into the abyss halted suddenly, and now I found myself at a bypass. Above me was light, below darkness. It was easy to let go, descend down and be at peace, or I could struggle and face the light. Reach out for it. What an impasse I stand at. Truly, I for once felt at peace. If not choosing means I could stay here in silence and calm, I'll rather have this. Slowly the cold sank into my body, freezing my burned wounds. In any other case it might have been a death sentence, however, currently, the cold was the only thing keeping me alive. A miracle indeed. I felt like the heat of my body mixed with the cold outside, both diminishing each other at each other's expense. Keeping me safe, keeping me alive. Something shook inside me, a memory cracked up at times like this. It's simple, curse energy is negative in nature, so to get positive energy out of it, what do we do in maths? Multiply two negatives. How easy it is to say that. I tried hundreds of times and couldn't do it when my life depended on it. But, I recalled how it felt to be healed after winning inside a domain, by Mahoraga's sword. My mind once again went to the mixing temperature of my burning body and the freezing ice outside. Perhaps it was indeed a miracle that even after so much, I once again reached out for my curse energy once more, deep down inside me, and asked. Follow this feeling. The current around me suddenly got violent. Energy twisted, curse energy collided into curse energy. Trying to find that feeling of healing. Crack. I heard something. I honestly heard something. It wasn't my mind playing tricks. So I continued. Another crack. My body felt a strange sensation. The heat stabilizes the cold. Both mixing into nothingness, blending into me to fix me. And then, it shattered. Into a million pieces, everything shattered and I fell down with a thud. Gone was the boiling water, or the freezing chill, gone was the light above me and darkness beneath. And slowly, and steadily, gone were the burns, the pain, and the scars. Smoke drifted out of me like a man rising from the ashes of his death. My gone eyes seemed to regain vision. All the haze was cleared. Teeth grew back, blood seemed to magically appear out of nowhere inside my streams. My skin regrew, hair grew back. Lungs could take air without pain, without feeling like they were pooling with my own blood. My curse energy felt different, not like armor or a weapon in my hands, but like a soft pillow, or a lover's hand caressing me. Deep breath in, once more to be certain I wasn't dreaming. This was real. I saw I was surrounded by ice. Real ice, not the one I was hallucinating on my deathbed. For confirmation, I even touched it, and more than the touch itself, the feeling that my hands were sensitive again felt exhilarating. Slowly the dead burned skin was shed away, what surfaced was unblemished tender skin as if recently grown. Which it did. Seems like I did it, huh? A grin threatened to break out of me. No. Not threatening, I was already grinning, in fact. I was laughing. Man, I feel alive. I slowly raised my arms wide, taking everything the world has to offer with close eyes. Feeling it, living it. Cold air of Shibuya grazed through my bare body, the ice occasionally giving me chills, yet the curse energy around me kept me warm, comfortable. RCT, reverse curse technique. God knows how, but I figured it out. I felt like I was on cloud 9. The comfort of RCT was immense, only those who had once felt it could understand the feeling. It was like being reborn. No wonder Satoru Gojo felt so high after the first time using RCT. This stuff was addicting. I giggled. Even unknown to me, RCT cast upon oneself was so potent that it didn't just heal wounds, bring a person back from the gates of hell, however, it also removed fatigue. Something which I had stored in tons ever since I came to this world. I took my sweet time. Enough time for my high to settle down. The excitement of not dying, to learn something which is considered the pinnacle of jujutsu sorcery like this was exhilarating. If only I had figured this shit out like 10 minutes ago. How did I even survive those 10 minutes was the real question. My domain definitely bore most of the burden for me by that last trade I did. Damage at back was increased exponentially in exchange for the potency of frontal damage. I was facing the meteor while Mahoraga wasn't. Then there was that boy, what was his name again, I can't quite recall, but the blonde was completely gone. Evaporated. Both Mahoraga and that boy's body took the major brunt of that attack. I somehow was sheltered behind them and barely survived. If being burned to death slowly and not instantly was called surviving, that is. Sigh. Finally out of my high horse, of being alive and more sturdy than ever, I looked around me. The place was wrecked, no wonder there. I knew what I was doing when I asked Jago to give me his best. The signs of burns were clear enough. However, what confused me was the ice. From where did ice come into this equation? Jago's reverse technique. Nah, can't be, I no longer have that after I used the sacrificial trade. So the only person in JJK with an ice technique came to mind. Yurao. But why would she help me? There was no reason for her to do that. I observed the place again. This didn't look like she was helping me exactly. How does freezing the entire place while leaving me to freeze to death make sense as helping me? Quote. My thoughts suddenly came to a halt when another cold breeze ran past me, and now I wasn't using RCT to not notice. The chilly night breeze rattled every bone inside me as I shuddered. It was cold as FCK. I looked down only to realize that I was standing in the middle of the street, absolutely naked. All my clothes were burned away. Shit, did I laugh like a maniac all naked in the middle of the street? My hands snapped to my groin, eyes darting sideways to find something, anything to cover before I was tomorrow's headline alongside all the destruction in the city. Naked terrorist spotted in an exhibitionist act after committing citywide bombing. Nope, That's the last thing I need. So I darted with both hands, covering everything I could with them, in search of clothes, and to save my modesty. XXX. How was it? Did you like it? I tried to make it look like this circumstances have forced him to learn RCT. Which was truth, and part of the reason he was alive was luck, as you guys have connected. But can you image where that luck originates? It should be right in front of you guys. Guess and tell me in the comments. Chapter 25. Cheating. I carefully placed him down and went to work, 2 buttons on his uniform undone and the coat was off him. Gotta say, the boy didn't look like it, but he was rather nicely built underneath. Next were his pants. That was a bit harder to open, opening the waist button with great difficulty. I slowly opened the zipper and tugged down his pants. Turns out taking someone's pants off when they ain't cooperating is really hard. I had to hold him up to tug down the pants, sticking to his legs like a second skin. Sighing, I looked at the unconscious boy's image one more time. Come on man, it's only fair I get your clothes after you lose that monster on me, even if that was unintentional, I grumbled. Hurriedly putting on the stolen uniform. It almost fit me, almost. Turns out that finding clothes in a mostly abandoned city was much harder than it looked, especially when you're but naked. And that's when my mind told me why not let the boy because of whom this all had happened pay for it. So I rushed back to Megumi. Poor boy had barely survived Jago's maximum meteor. If only a bit closer to the crash site, and he would have been toast. Not that I personally have any friendship with him, if anything, I have lingering resentment over what I had to go through. But still, I'm happy that he isn't dead. I hurriedly took his shoes. They were a bit on the bigger side but they will do. And just like that, I was now a student in Jujutsu High, lookwise at least, and Megumi was the pervert going around naked. He at least had underwear unlike me. Now, what to do with him? I crouched down and stuck my head to his chest, tuning out the environmental noise to hear his heartbeat. For a second I thought he was a goner, but I heard it, very faint, almost non-existent heartbeat. It was there. My lips curled up ever so slightly. What do you know, even without Daddy Sukuna looking out for you, you pulled through yet, potential man. And just as the smile came, it was wiped off as well. Because Megumi's heartbeat was weak, very weak. If I don't do anything, he'll die. Taking him to Shoko is the best option I have, but I don't know where those Jujutsu High staff are. This place is as barren as a desert. Option 2 would be taking him to Maki. Hopefully they are still there, and alive. She would know where Shoko is. But would Megumi survive until then? TCH. Seems like I have no other choice but to hope I pull off another miracle. Pray I do, Fushiguro, for your own sake. I reached down to the core of my curse energy, recalling that feeling, and instantly, curse energy manifested into my arms. However, it wasn't normal cursed energy. The color was white, it was calmer and it was brimming with life. Reverse cursed energy. Being able to heal others with reverse cursed energy was an entirely different ball game than using RCT to heal oneself. Unconfidently, I stared at the healing energy flickering on my hand and then at the half-naked boy. Here goes nothing, I guess. I pressed on his gut and poured the energy into him. I could feel it pass easily enough, but whether it was healing, I had no idea. I kept pouring my positive energy into the boy until I felt it was enough, and once again brought down my head near his chest to hear. Dumb. What do you know, it worked. Even I was surprised I pulled it off, but then again, it might be something related to my technique. Trading away powers and energy, it's not new to me. So perhaps that experience helped me out. There, now we are even. Even if the entire fiasco with Mahoraga was not intended by you, saving your life should make us even for taking your clothes. Of course, I had no idea how good or bad the boy's current condition was. I was no doctor. But this has to do for now. But taking him with me all the way until I find Shoko. Yeah, didn't sound very appealing, especially seeing he was naked and I undoubtedly was wearing his uniform. Rumors have started for less in this internet era. But I can't just leave him here either, can I? Sigh. I picked up the boy. He was surprisingly light for his height and looks. But it could also be perhaps that I was stronger now. Which I was, not physically but even unconsciously. I was reinforcing myself with CE, barely that I couldn't tell. However, the difference was apparent. Those fights really did a number on me, didn't they? Quickly finding a vacant alley while carrying the half-naked Prince Charming in a princess carry, before someone spotted me, I laid him down beside a trash can so he was less visible. Sorry for the spot, I promise I'll quickly find your friend and come back to get you, or send someone to fetch ya, so sit tight until then, okay. I patted the still unconscious boy's shoulder and got a move on. I finally felt a bit of relief. No curse was breathing down my throat, but the tension was still there, mostly regarding Maki and others. Gotta go back to them quick. My instincts told me otherwise. Why bother with that when I could clearly just get the hell out of the city right now and never look back at this place again? However, the image of Maki shoving me away to take the blade, intended for me, herself, kept flashing inside my mind. The image of Naobito coming to rescue me when Dagon almost had me inside his domain, or Nanami helping me out when Dagon flooded the station. I am a lot of things, but I'm not ungrateful to those who helped me and showed me kindness. I'll take them and Megumi here to Shoko and we are done. I'm out. I grinned. Finally, it seemed things were not crashing down on me like earlier. With extra long steps, I rushed toward the station to unite with Maki and others. Crossing the intersection, I increased my speed a bit, all clear until now. Things are finally looking out for. My legs came to an extreme halt on my increasingly rising speed as all the enthusiasm came crashing down. As soon as I turned around once again, I came face to face with a man with blue hair and a patched face. He seemed to be playing with a toy. The patched face, him being here alone, or even the fact a grown-up man toying with a toy didn't startle me. What stopped me was where the toy came from. A man was lying nearby, and his head seemed to morph like clay and then be shaped by the patch-faced man to form a toy. The long flesh still connected the toy to the man's body. I just stood there, staring at him, and eventually the patch face also turned towards me after a second or two. Our eyes connected, we both blinked. He seemed to light up upon seeing me. Oh, new toy. My lower lip quivered, eyes started to sting as mist clouded them. No, I shook my head in defiance. No, 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 no. This ain't happening. This is not happening. Patch blinked and knocked his head sideways. What's happening? I though continued to shake my head, tears threatening to fall from my eyes. This is cheating, 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 you're cheating, I shouted. Patch face looked even more confused. For a curse born of humanity's distrust towards itself, Mahito, aka Patch Face, claims that he knew humans well. This human might be the only one he couldn't figure out. Why was the man kept on shouting that he was cheated? He hasn't even done anything yet. And why is he pointing up at the sky when saying that? He kept on shaking his head fanatically, shouting. It's not fair, why me again? No. Absolutely no. I don't like this game. I won't play this game. Nah, no, never. I'm out, I'm not playing this game. The human shouted hysterically and then turned back, tears flying dramatically as he turned, light shining on them, and then he ran off the other way. Mahito was left behind with a confused face and a cartoonish question mark bouncing near his head. He really didn't get this human. But then a smile appeared on his face. Meaning we are playing tag, correct? Okay, you run, and I'll catch. He grinned and bolted right behind the human. XXX. Fighting it out is not the only option, you know. Sometimes it's better to do a strategic retreat. Lol. In that dialogue, it sounded so funny in my head when I thought of MC doing that. So I added it in. Chapter 26. The Chase. Running away. A technique of self-protection, being performed since ancient times. This is an instinctive response to harm and threat ingrained in every sentient life form. Since the dawn of life on Earth, this instinct has been passed on from one generation to the next. Perhaps the most interesting and underrated fact about this technique was that it didn't need any superpowers to perform. Yes, anyone could do it. And so, I ran. With everything I had, I turned around and ran. No shame in that, I have no one to answer for my act of cowardice. No one saw, and I doubt anyone will believe a curse anyway. So why put my life on the line when I have the option to just flee? I didn't have that when I fought those cursed spirits in the station, at least I tried though. I couldn't run from Dagon's domain. I couldn't run away from Jago. If I had done that, then Maki and others would have died. And it's foolish to even think there was an option to run against someone like Mahoraga. But now was the perfect time to give this underrated technique a chance, right? I now have a strong reason to suspect that I'm cursed. I cursed internally and picked up speed, sensing movement behind me. Mahito, aka Patch Face, was hot on my heels after me. Over my shoulder, I looked and saw Mahito keeping up while his legs transformed into those of an animal, speed nearly doubling. FCK. I turned a corner sharply, nearly slipping on loose debris as I forced myself into a narrow alleyway, hoping to break line of sight. My breathing was going all over the place, each inhale burning my lungs as I pushed them past their limit. When it comes to CE control, I was really getting good there, but my body. It was at its best shape. I gotta hit the gym if I survive this hellhole, I promise. Oi, wait up for me, this is no fun if you keep running away, you know. Mahito's voice rang, too close to my liking. Suddenly, the cursed spirit's limbs stretched mid-sprint and they shot out like spikes right at me. I almost got hit in the back if not for the last-minute turn at the end of the alley. I kicked off the wall to my side, using the momentum to vault over a collapsed section of concrete blocking the alley. My landing was rough, my legs almost giving out beneath me at the absurd parkouring I had to perform without any prior experience. I forced them to keep moving. Why God, what have I done wrong to you that you're hellbent on making my life miserable? There are several other sorcerers running around Shibuya today, isn't there? So tell me, why every goddamn curse is after my ass? I didn't wish to, but tears of injustice threatened to spill out of my eyes once again. As for Mahito, I wasn't certain, but going by the anime, his appearance, those stitches around his face, and that disfigured human whose face he turned into a toy, there was no doubt that that was the soul-sucking freak from the anime. Just as midway down the alley, knocking off anything on the way to slow Mahito down, suddenly I heard the footsteps behind me fade away. I looked over my shoulder and surprisingly, he wasn't following anymore. Question mark. Did he lose interest or something? I slowed down slightly, taking long deep breaths, but still on the move. Not spotting his figure anywhere, a little kindling hope ignited that I lost him. Quickly covering half of the alley, I intended to get out of this place when at the turning a hand shot out for me out of nowhere. Found you. My heart almost gave out the way that hand came to my face. I by instinct, put all my weight back and almost fell backwards until I used my hands to support my falling body midway. That hand barely missed me. I quickly in adrenaline, sent a hard kick at Mahito's stomach and, kicking the freak away and at the same time used that boost to redirect myself the other way. FCK, that was close. I almost died there. My heart could give a race car's engine a run for its money right now. Any more and I don't need curses, I'll be gone by cardiac arrest. I bolted the other way with everything I got, putting extra long leaps to make distance from that lunatic. I couldn't let him touch me. No matter what, can't let him touch me or FCK curse energy reinforcement, I was a dead man. Even worse, I might become one of those disfigured humans of his. A chill ran down my spine at what kind of threat Mahito was, and he was exactly behind me. That alone gave me a slight speed boost. The biggest problem with this one was that I really can't fight him. Normal attacks do nothing to him. Only attacks which could harm souls would work on him, and I had nothing like that on hand. Oh come on, stop running away, let's have fun together, Mahito called out from behind. Like hell I'll believe you. Over my dead body, I cut through another street, weaving between abandoned vehicles and shattered storefronts, trying to create distance, trying to stay unpredictable. My movements were sloppy, far from a professional escape artist, but I didn't have the luxury of precision anymore. There was no bigger motivation than running for your life after all. Mahito, who was chasing just a few meters behind, grinned seeing the human constantly darting left and right to lose himself. Somehow, this was fun. Come on, stop, look, I promise not to do anything to you, pinky promise, Mahito shouted. My brow twitched with irritation, like as if, FCKU. I screamed and bolted faster. If anything, this made him grin even wider. Suddenly, his hands once again started to transform and turned into long whips and shot out at me from behind. The attack came so suddenly that the first hit landed exactly at my leg and made me go tumbling down the path, straight into a trash bin. The world seemed to spin around me only for a second before my body was up again, dodging another whip. I poured curse energy into my legs and jumped with everything I had in me, stepping between the walls surrounding us to escape vertically instead of horizontally this time. And quickly was on the rooftop. Seeing him following through, I just cursed and once again bolted from rooftop to rooftop. This could have been a great cinematic chase scene for a movie or so if not for the very real threat to my life. I hurriedly crossed the building and parkoured into another, Mahito already doing the same on the buildings on the other side. Damn it, I need to lose him somehow. While parkouring away, I saw an intersection and quickly looked behind. Mahito was still behind. I happened to see that place before, while running away. Turns out we were running in circles. Good lord, but I remembered there was a big board on the right there. A plan instantly formed inside my mind, and I intentionally jumped down from the roof of a single-story building, heading right at the intersection. Looking back, I saw Mahito was still there. I had a feeling that he wasn't directly chasing me like someone trying to catch their prey as quickly as possible. He was following, observing, letting me exhaust myself while he closed the gap at his own pace. Almost playing around with me. That was even worse. I pushed myself again, a last-ditch effort to speed up and give me just enough time to pull off the stunt I had in mind. Ignoring the way my body protested, I ran, and at the intersection, took a hard right turn. However, instead of turning exactly, I rammed into the pillar holding a balcony on the first floor of the building before me. Without losing speed, I kicked the pillar mid-motion, and with that kick, I took a hard right turn. The pillar gave way, I poured my CE into that kick, the entire structure came crashing down, directly on Mahito, who was exactly behind me. Mahito saw the balcony falling on top of him, but couldn't react in time, not that it would hurt him, so why bother? He didn't feel a thing, he twisted his soul under the wreckage, and his body followed. Like a snake, he pulled himself out of the rubble without any trouble. However, when Mahito was out, he seemed to have lost his target. A frown appeared on his face, now he had to go find him again. He looked around, he wasn't trapped inside the wreckage long enough for that human to completely disappear. He must be here. His eyes wandered around, sure the human was here, and he tried to sense his curse energy. But then a sharp noise of something hitting something rang out just a little ahead and his frown turned upside down. Found you. He grinned and rushed ahead at top speed. And as he vanished further ahead, I, who was watching all this behind a huge board on the second floor of the building, sighed in relief. Heart hammering against my chest like it was about to burst out any second. I sighed, finally taking a deep breath in, happy that the plan worked. However, my lips pursed a bit, thinking what that sound was, which wasn't part of the plan. I thought of hiding, yes, but beyond that I had no idea. If not for whoever caused that sound, Mahito might still be here. Perhaps luck decided to show a little mercy on me. Yeah, let's leave it at that. I can't stay here for long, I have to move before Mahito finds nothing there and comes searching for me here again. So I pushed my body up and climbed to the rooftop again, searching where I was. Good news, I was very close to Shibuya Station, and Mahito just went the other way, meaning the entire route was clear. Sighing, I was already on my way there. This time I didn't dally, straight toward the station. On the other side, Mahito rushed toward the sound. He heard the sound first and thought it was a feint to lure him in, but he clearly sensed curse energy there. So he went. And just as he took 2 more turns, right in front of him was the human. He came to a halt, mouth going a bit into an O shape since this wasn't the human he was chasing earlier. This one was a girl. Ah well, I'm into girls anyway. And somewhere else entirely, Maki had just retrieved her spare weapon from Panda, which took longer than usual since locating Panda was no easy task, he was with Kusakabe and very far away. Now she was marching towards the center of the city to find either Megumi or that boy. Or perhaps those cursed spirits. Whichever she could spot first. Just as she passed multiple alleys, she came to an abrupt halt. She blinked behind her glasses, pondering over what she just saw. She quickly backpedaled to find the very person she was looking for, at least one of them. Lying there in his entire glory, one half-naked Fushiguro Megumi, all knocked out, behind a trash bin. You kidding me? Maki's eyes twitched with irritation. Recalling the strong man with 0 curse energy who killed Dagon going after Megumi, Maki was worried sick. She looked back at Megumi, all his clothes gone, and wondered, what kind of fight was it? She hurriedly went to check on him, he looked fine to her. Just unconscious. And now came the problem of what to do next. She can't just leave him here like this. Naked and defenseless. She looked ahead, where that boy or the cursed spirit might be, and then back to Megumi. An internal conflict broke out inside her. And ultimately, she could only curse. Damn it, Megumi. Chapter 27. Slowly losing it. Laughter of despair. A psychological coping mechanism, often called gallows humor, where intense, mirthless laughter emerges from situations of extreme stress, fear, or hopelessness. Something which fit me so well right now that I couldn't stop the mirth exploding out of me. I didn't mean to, but my mind thought it was necessary before I might black out instead. Everything started when I entered the station again, thinking of meeting Maki and others and being done with it. And as soon as I did that, my eyes remained wide open in disbelief at what I was seeing. I couldn't understand how this was possible. I was certain he went the other way, so how come? By the time I reached the underground levels of Shibuya Station, my breathing had already turned uneven, my chest rising and falling in sharp, strained motions as I forced myself forward. To be certain Mahito wouldn't chase me, I ran all the way in the most direct route possible. I probably wasn't as fast as that soul freak, but still I believed I would have seen him coming on the way if he was. The dim artificial lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the empty corridors, and for a brief moment I thought I might have actually managed to create some distance. There he was. How? I have no idea. I didn't even sense his curse energy. When the hell did he come here? Am I missing something here? Mahito didn't rush in, he just looked at me with his usual nonchalant glance. He almost behaved like he didn't even know me until then. Bizarre, if anything, the way he behaved and the way he was here so fast. A chill ran up my spine at how creepy the look he was giving me, smiling with that nonchalant smile of his at me. "Are you here to play?" he asked. There was no overwhelming blast of force, no immediate attempt to rush at me. "Play, huh?" I murmured with a chuckle breaking out of my mouth. "Playing? Yes. Ha 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 ha." And that was when I felt like something inside me broke. The sanity holding on thin ice shattered so magnificently that I had to laugh. Yes, of course, ha ha ha. God, isn't this what it is for you? A game, I snapped, voice uneven, anger and despair boiling together into something I didn't wish to address. What could I possibly have said? Complained about why I was the one being targeted like that? Would that have accomplished something? Mahito blinked, looking at the laughing human with complicated eyes. Did the human lose it or something? I kept on laughing, to the point I felt my stomach start to cramp. Irrespective of Mahito calmly watching over me, I laughed. And when I stopped, I had tears trailing down my cheeks. This laughing does that to you? I slowly wiped them away, and looked at Mahito still waiting patiently, standing there. Observing me with the same kind of educational curiosity a zoologist might show upon finding a new species of animal or insect. He stood a short distance away, his posture relaxed, his expression almost amused as if this entire situation was nothing more than entertainment to him. Which most likely it was, and that made me even angrier. "My, you look terrible," he said lightly, tilting his head as though genuinely curious. "Did something fun happen before this?" "Fun? That was fun. This son of a BTCH thinks me dying 3 times over and getting chased halfway across the city was fun." I gritted my teeth hard with irritation. The bastard was getting on my nerves. "Fine, huh?" He blinked. I looked at him with bloodshot eyes, irritation climbing higher and higher. "You wanna play, right? I'll play." "Really?" Mahito's eyes shone like someone offered him a new toy. "Yeah," I smiled back, "let's have a good time together." "I don't care, I'm punching him to Sunday. No more running. If I don't get something to punch right now then I'll explode." My eyes fell onto his hands. Those were dangerous. If he touched me, even once, it was over. My rational mind, if there was any left, screamed at me that this was suicide. Which it most likely was. But damn it, I would rather die than keep moping about my disastrous luck. Mahito moved first, his body shifting forward in a smooth, almost lazy motion, but the speed behind it was anything but casual. His arm extended, fingers stretching unnaturally as he reached for me, and I reacted immediately, throwing myself backward just as his hand passed through the space where my chest had been a fraction of a second earlier. Too close, and I knew he was faster. This was a very bad idea. I didn't wait for him to recover from the motion. I stepped in. If I kept running, I would just die slower. I have to hit. So I punched. Cursed energy surged through my arm, but this time it wasn't the same raw, instinctive flow I had been relying on before. I forced something else into it, something far more difficult to maintain, something that fought against my instincts instead of following them. Reverse cursed energy. My fist connected with his side, and the reaction was immediate. The experience I had fighting Mahoraga, seeing how he actually output raw positive energy as a weapon, surely had motivated this move. Mahito's expression twisted like a yo-yo, changing colors faster than the neon lights of Shibuya, his body recoiling as if struck by something far more dangerous than a normal attack. The point of impact distorted violently, his form rippling unnaturally as if it was rejecting what I had just forced into it. Curses are beings made of curse energy. And reverse curse technique is the exact opposite of that. Needless to say, for curses, reverse curse energy acts like poison. Ironic since it was nothing but pure elixir and life-saving grace for humans. He staggered back a step. The impact area was completely burned off, smoking while sizzling hot. Mahito's eyes widened at the impact he just received and then at me. However, instead of the angry look I was expecting out of him, what I got was a sinister grin. The distortion smoothed out almost instantly as his body reshaped itself, the damage disappearing as if it had never been there. He straightened, his hand brushing lightly over the spot where I had struck him, his expression shifting from mild curiosity to something more interested. "That's new," he murmured. My lips pursed up. For sure I thought that would help, but apparently not. RCT can only damage his physical body, his soul was completely intact. If only my output with RCT was higher like Mahoruga's sword, then surely I could have outright evaporated his entire body. Nothing to come back from. Sigh. For once anger started to settle down and I realized just how badly I was suited to fight this curse. Earlier decision to run away was far wiser. But I was nothing else but stubborn, especially after so much had happened. I stepped forward again, forcing my body to keep moving despite the strain, despite how unnatural it felt to maintain the flow of reverse cursed energy through my fists. Every second I used it drained me faster. RCT wasn't just new to me but it was also harder, much harder to maintain than normal curse energy manipulation. So I made sure to make my punches count. I swung again. He avoided it this time, his body bending at an unnatural angle as my fist passed just inches from his face. His counter came immediately, his hand snapping toward my shoulder, and I twisted away just in time, feeling the air shift as his fingers missed me by a hair's breadth. Death was inches away and I was playing hero. How stupidly hopeless. But the thought of giving up didn't cross my mind. I really wanted to punch the bastard, in a way he could feel it. I pressed forward again, throwing another punch, then another, each one reinforced with reverse cursed energy, each one forcing him to adjust, to avoid, to reshape himself around the attacks. They merely touched him, and the damage would always heal up as soon as it was done. That curse technique of his was broken AF. No, I can't keep this up. I'll exhaust myself using RCT before I even land a single punch at him. I grumbled, seeing the problem with my strategy. Meanwhile, Mahito wasn't giving me any time to think. Every movement he made carried the same threat, every reach of his hand a potential end. I had to watch him constantly. Suddenly, his hands started to elongate, turning into long snake-like vines, shooting right at me. Shit, I hurriedly backed up, dodging the hands the best I could have, when it happened. I was so focused on the hands that I almost forgot where Mahito himself was. Using his elongated hands, he had distracted me and suddenly appeared right behind me. Time slowed down. His tongue came out, elongated as well, and formed a third hand in the air. As gross as it was, the grossness of the act never crossed me because that was an incoming death sentence at me. He had gotten me at point-blank range. XXX. He is losing it slowly. Anyone would after almost dying a dozen of time in last hour or so. As for fighting Mahito, it would be pretty hard. Any idea who he can do that? If you want to read up to 10+ chapters in advance, check my Patreon on patreon.com/kamidemond. To be continued.